Let's call the meeting to order. Julie, if you wouldn't mind, would you do a roll call, please?
Certainly. Kara Caston. Here. Ken Dawson.
Here.
Christopher Espinoza.
Here.
Cheryl Fuller.
Here.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Here.
Craig Havasik.
Here.
Don Renner.
Here.
Rihan Hashim.
Here.
And Jason Trejo.
Here.
All right, having a quorum, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Hank, I'll turn it over for student perspectives.
All right, I'll invite Alan Portman forward.
Good evening. We are really excited to present these three students to you tonight. They attended the ISB Student Summit at ISU. One of my favorite parts was that Dr. Hank Thiele drove the minibus. And
Safely.
Dr. Demet and I just got to be passengers on the bus with these lovely students and their peers, and it was just an absolutely wonderful day, and the three of them are going to tell you all about it. Do you want to add anything?
No, that's perfect.
All right, so I'll have you guys come up, introduce yourselves, and they're just going to tell you about the experience.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Great.
Okay, I'm Anvi Krishnardua, and I'm a sophomore at Downers Grove South.
I'm Emil Pacheco, and I'm a junior at Downers Grove South.
And I'm Owen Wills. I'm a sophomore at Downers Grove North.
Okay, so really quickly, we just want to talk about the format of the ISB Student Summit. It was a really welcoming environment, surrounded by people who wanted to talk like you wanted to talk about. They were really interested in everything you had to say, and it was a really eye-opening experience with what we did really well and what we could improve on, because we have, as Ms. Lip says, never-ending improvement. And so with that, we were divided up into 4 sections, and we had 4 topics, and they would rotate around with the student board over at ISB, and we would talk about each thing, and it was just a really positive environment for us to be able to talk about different experiences and see how our school does really great things. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Yamil, who will tell you about those great things we do.
All right, so the first topic we talked about was the curriculum, and one of the main points where some schools thought they didn't offer enough CTE, like courses, like engineering, art, drawing, and other courses. And I think DGS does a great job, and DGN, at offering a multitude of courses. Like as a junior, I haven't been able to take as many because my classes are like full. So I thought it was great that we offered as many courses. And some people thought that there was enough like clubs, but at DGS and DGN, we do a great job at making sure that everyone's included and participating in clubs. So I thought that was great for me because I'm a part of Politics Club Metal UN. So I think it was great to have everyone from different variety of clubs come in and participate in those discussions.
Yeah, and we did have a couple topics that we did feel were some areas that were very new to the education world, such as AI, as well as student management in terms of technology and new curriculums that come out and a lot more rigorous courses. We felt that AI is a new type of technology used for students throughout the school, and with it being so new, a lot of students are misusing it, but we did feel that ignoring the problem was probably going to make it worse. So we believe that a good kind of conclusion with that would be trying to implement some areas in curriculums and some literacy courses to help students understand the best ways to use AI and where not to. And then I believe we also talked about, it was student engagement. A big thing that a lot of teachers harp on in our schools are going to be phone usage, and we felt that a lot of the issue with student engagement did stem from that, but we also believe that it doesn't just stem from the student as well. A lot of in our discussions, we found that student engagement kind of from the student's perspective stems from the teacher and how they structure the class periods. With having a block schedule and having those long periods, those times can become very, very dull for students. And that's when they will turn to some more enticing stuff like our phones. You know, that's a common problem with them. So we do feel that in that area, kind of implementing ways to help teachers figure out a more engaging curriculum and just make it a more positive learning environment for students.
Yeah, and that's about it. Just wrapping it up, just how we were able to form new opinions and ideas about how our district can better phone usage and student engagement and all that, because it's a very new topic, but we have to learn to roll with the tide rather than fight against it. So with that, that concludes what we learned.
Any questions from board members?
You know, in your conversations in those groups, is there anything that you would like to bring back to South and North to improve on what we're doing here? Any best practices that you saw at other schools?
Long time ago. I will say what we don't recommend, which is we were hearing from a lot of students about they have those yonder pouches. You might have heard of them. That was like what they put their phones in throughout the day, and it locks them. And you can't take it out throughout the school period, and then you unlock it at the end of the day. And we found that that was very, very negative to the learning environment and even negative to like school spending, because a lot of students would find themselves breaking them open. So we did find that was something that we shouldn't do.
Yeah, no, just on that, just learning how to use our phones through the curriculum, maybe taking short-term breaks, because I know this is something we need to improve on, but our attention span in this generation is a shorter attention span, so having those breaks to refresh, relearn, whether it's just getting up and stretching or just having your phone out for like 2 minutes to take a break between lessons, just making sure that with student engagement we're keeping in mind the exhaustion that students kind of face, and that's a lot of what we learned in student engagement.
Great.
I will also add that bringing back a lot more areas, because we have a great amount of career readiness programs. In some ways that is very good, and then I'd also like to build on the idea, because some classes do have great field trips and opportunities for that. I think it'd be good to structure curriculums around encouraging internships and field trips to areas that they might be interested in to encourage future career pursuit in terms of those classes.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, make
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thanks for representing us. All right, student board member reports.
All right, I can start off. All right, so at DGS, first of all, coming right up tomorrow, or no, Wednesday, sorry, is yearbook distribution, which I think we are all looking forward to, especially seniors, one final chance to get all our signatures in. And later on in the week will be our spring art show, which showcases all our talent from our fine arts here at DGS, which is something I'm really looking forward to because I have a lot of friends in fine arts and they've been really excited to showcase all of that. And then later on, as you all know, we're getting ready for graduation, which is something that we're all looking forward to, especially that graduation practice barbecue that we're gonna have. And earlier this week, or last week, we had our last PSAC discussion where we met with a dean and a security officer on focusing on how we can implement students' well-being and just overall bettering how active they are and how tardy, detentions, overall just getting a student's perspective on all that. And yeah, that about sums it up.
For us, it's not been too long since I've talked to you guys, but overall, things are wrapping up. Seniors just had their prom, and overall the event was pretty put together, and people learned a lot, and the fireworks were a good touch. This week is AP test week, so most of the buzz is about preparing for them. So I took one today, and I do want to say that the digital format is really helping with the time crunch, and I feel like people have a lot more time left over after they're done with the question. So that's one thing that I noticed, after I was finished, and I just looked around, there's a lot more people done. People had way more time left. So I think that is a really good improvement when we're looking at those AP tests.
That's very different than your feedback from the last time you talked about
Yeah, which
digital
was the
format.
ACT test.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Two different, again.
So you're
like-
saying the AP is doing a better job than
So like
ACT?
College Board in that sense is doing a way better, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah. And then another thing I wanted to bring up was we had our last student advisory board meeting last week, and a lot of our discussion during that meeting was centered around communication towards our student body, and how we're going to get across messages and different information to our students, and how we can better do that, right? Because as of now, most students don't really check their email that often and stuff like that, and like it's hard to get our student body more informed. And like some of the solutions we were coming up with was kind of employing more upperclassmen and more people that have already been at DGN for a while to like communicate to our underclassmen, right? Because those are the kids that kind of get loose or do not get the information that we need to get them with. And then another thing that we also talked about was the access lessons, and like trying to create more access lessons that are more meaningful, because a lot of time what I'm noticing and feedback that I'm getting from is these access lessons that we're giving are not really getting through, right? Like a lot of them are way too short, or they're not really getting the students engaged in what we're talking about, even though I know that all of those lessons are really important to like stuff that you guys have as requirements to deliver to the students, right? So I think we need to do a little bit better job. I don't know what that would look like, but delivering that and engaging students in that time period, right? But yeah, other than that, those were most of the criticisms I heard from the student advisory board meeting that we got. But yeah, that's it for me.
All right, thank you both. Their last meeting will be with us the next time, so we'll be happy to celebrate you then.
May 1st has come and gone, and I didn't hear any updates from either of you about any individual information you might want to share.
That's the next board meeting.
Oh, it's the next board meeting?
Don't.
I'm just curious, I guess, so I
You're gonna
guess I'll have to wait.
You're
I'll
gonna
have to wait. Okay.
Don't steal their thunder.
I'm sorry. Okay. Item number 4, approval of minutes. Can I get a motion from the Board of Education to approve the minutes of the April 21st, 2025 business meeting, the April 21st, 2025 closed meeting, the April 28th, 2025 Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee meeting, and the May 1st, 2025 special meeting with action item?
So moved.
Second.
Terry moves, Ken seconds.
Thank you. Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Ken Dawson.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
Joel Fuller.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Kara Caston.
Aye.
And Don Renner.
Aye, motion carries. Item 5, board workshop, parent-teacher advisory committee meeting. Feedback.
I'll turn this over to Scott.
Okay.
Yeah, so we held our meeting last Monday, April 28th, at South High in the library. We had a pretty good turnout. I think we had maybe 22 confirmed coming in. We were around 14. It was a beautiful day. Usually we get a storm when we're at South, so I can understand. We were fortunate, obviously, Kara and Jenny were there, so we could get input from you two as well. But it was nice that Mike, April, and Katie were there as well, so that was nice to have everyone be there and kind of learn a little bit about it. We went through, Nicole and Pat talked about our PAP program, and we gave some data similar to what the board had received about looking at recidivism and things like that. Had a brainstorming activity to try to get some insights on, just reflections on improving our program. We did talk about chronic absenteeism, and then we posed a brainstorming challenge, which was truly a challenging question of looking at data around students that are chronically absent, that are passing their classes and not passing their classes. So it led to some really good discussion around that. And then Gina had the consolidated district plan that she has to get feedback around. We did send out a Google form to get some additional feedback. If people are like me, I usually leave meetings and then I think like, oh, I got 4 other things that I wanted to share. So we did ask for feedback. We had a couple input so far. We have about 3 attendees give some feedback. We're hoping for a little bit more. But yeah, I think it was a successful night. The PATH program, whether it's small or large in our attendance, has always produced quality discussions. And, you know, Hank, as we've gone through this, we've seen like the creation of PATH. We've added like social work support and things like that through just ideas that have come out of this group. So we really do appreciate it regardless of the size. So I don't know if you guys have any other insights on it. Thought it was a good night.
I thought it was really good. They highlighted, you know, a couple of areas where maybe we could use a little bit more staff support. So hopefully that will lead to some meaningful discussions.
Yeah, and I liked that we sort of posed like a problem and sort of looked for, I mean, I think not just sort of a rosy picture and we're reporting out. I think people appreciated the opportunity to, and you know, some of those anecdotal stories from either teachers or parents help add color too. So I appreciated that. Yeah, it was my first one. I enjoyed it. It was very educational.
Okay. Any other questions for Scott or our board members that were in attendance? All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
item 6. Hank, I'll turn this over to you.
Recognition of outgoing board members. We have 3 board members that are that chose not to seek re-election and to step down off the board after very distinguished terms of service. And the administration would like to recognize each of them. So the first board member I'm going to recognize is Jenny Hagstrom. Recognizing for 4 years. Next up is Sherelle Fuller. We're recognizing her for 8 years of service. Someone that's been around for a day or two on the board. We are recognizing Terry Pavicic for 20 years on the board. And in that time, in her board service, from 2015 to 2019 and 2023 to 2025, also served as board vice president. And Terry was one of the board members on the board that decided to hire me. So running out of those board members. So thank you all for years of distinguished service. There was several years in there that might have been some of the most difficult in public service that we could have had. Thank you for always putting students first, all 3 of you, in the decisions that we were making, and always come to the table willing to listen and to learn and to represent our students and our community in the decisions and the hard decisions that needed to be made. Distinguished, excellent service to your community over those years. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we're going to each just take a moment or two to say a couple of things, and we'll go in order of shortest to longest term of service. Thank you all very much. I want to sincerely thank everyone for the opportunity to serve on the District 99 Board of Education over the last 4 years. It has really been an incredible experience, and I've had the privilege of working alongside many dedicated and very inspiring individuals. There have been countless highlights during my time on the board, witnessing the outstanding work of our administration, teachers, and students, contributing to the progress and the growth of the district, and celebrating milestones like graduation. It's always a highlight. So When I began this journey, I knew very little about the inner workings of a school district. 4 years later, I leave with deep respect for the people that keep District 99 moving forward. I'm very confident that the district is in excellent hands. It's always evolving, always learning, and always focused on preparing our students for the next chapters of their lives. So thank you again for the opportunity. It's really been an honor.
All right. So I want to thank the community for the opportunity to serve in Community High School District 99. In 2017, I'll stand because I can see people trying to. In 2017, when I started this journey, I did not know exactly what I was getting into. But I knew one thing that was certain is that students, the staff, and our community were a priority for me. And that would be the forefront of all my decision-making experience. And that's one thing that never changed over the course of my 8 years. What I learned over the 8 years is that we volunteer hard for Community High School District 99. We are dedicated people that encountered some hard decisions over the past 8 years. I did plan to cry, so you know. It's in some cases decisions that I lost sleep over, but we got through it. I'm proud of so many things we accomplished, like the master facility plan, and things like the increased number of dual credit classes and trades, and seeing the addition of student board members, which happened in my tenure here. I watched the tenacity and resilience, and I saw our students face with things like COVID. We have amazing kids. To my fellow board members, the board members I have served with, I appreciate each of you. I appreciate the opportunity to serve with you and how it was not always easy decisions, but we are better because of it. We were able to be respectful to each other's opinions and work together. To Dr. Seeley and the administration, thank you for all that you do. Your jobs are not easy and require a lot of dedication and work. I also want to thank all of the teachers and all that I have encountered, all the students that I've encountered, and everyone inside the walls of Community District 99. Many of you have come to meetings and showed your passion, your compassion, our staff, and commitment to our education. And finally, to our community, the one thing I learned is that although we may have been on different sides of things at times, but the thing I learned is that the commonality that we had is that we were all passionate about something we believed in, our students, our community, or all of the above. Let's continue to work together in that commonality that we have, and that's the passion for our community, our students, and the things that we believe. But let's do that by remembering to give each other grace, to continue to exercise compassion, and to also continue to be listeners. Because the one thing I know, we all want District 99 to continue to thrive. And finally, to Julia Beckman, she was the person who thought it was a great idea that I do this. I too believe it was a great idea, and I am happy to have served you all. Thank you.
I'm sorry. This is a tough one for me. I agree with everything that both of you have said. It's been a pleasure. I just want to say the number one thing, I want to thank my family. They gave me the opportunity to come here on Monday nights and to be able to read all of the information. I just want to say thank you to them because they gave me a lot. And they were the reason I ran in the first place. My parents taught me that not to stay on the sidelines, but to get involved. And if you want to make things better. And that's the way I felt. And so I just want to thank everyone in the community who have supported me throughout my tenure on this board. Without you, I couldn't have done this, so thank you. I also want to thank our teachers and staff. They have made it a pleasure to serve. Also, to all of my fellow board members, past and present. You have mentored and guided me throughout the years, and I truly appreciate that. Without working together, it wouldn't have been the outstanding district that it is. We have weathered many highs and many lows. I'm sorry. We've come through many referendums. The Woodridge property, you all remember that. COVID. Well, maybe some of us. And major renovations on our buildings. They have made our district stronger. In my tenure, we've had the leadership of 3 outstanding superintendents, Dr. Eblin, Dr. McDonald, and Dr. Thiele. Thank you. Thank you all. All have contributed greatly to making this, our district, a desirable destination to raise a family. Keep up that great work. It's not easy, but I know you can do it. Looking back over the years, I will miss the challenges in this district moving forward, and it always will have a place in my heart. I expect to be seeing our sports and our academics at the top of the standings. So keep up the good work. Our students are accomplishing their goals. That's what makes me very proud and glad to put the time in to making our district better. Also, I hope that the foundation will continue to provide innovative and opportunities for all of our students. There are always ways to donate, so make sure you go to the website and click on that donation button, because that's how we keep that going. I will miss celebrating all of our students' accomplishments. That's what I enjoyed most about being a board member. I will miss all of you the most, and along the way, I have made many friends and you will not be forgotten. I hope to write a book someday that Jenny is suggesting on just the uniqueness of my life.
That's right.
I do have one regret, though. Of the 20 years, I have been an advocate for this village to approve electronic signs.
If we get one, I'm putting your name on it.
Can you get that done before I leave? Again, thanks to everyone and everything. I will miss all of you. Thank you so much.
Item 7, any reception of visitors, Julie?
No, sir.
None?
None, no, sir.
Would you like to say something, Julie?
Yes, yes it is.
Here I am breaking the rules. Since this is very tall. Since my name was mentioned, I think I should
Take it off.
I should speak. I'll just take this off.
There you go.
I can walk around. But no, I really intended to speak anyway to say thank you to the retiring board members, and also in advance to the new board members who are stepping forward. I know we thought we had some difficult periods of time when I was on the board, but I know you went through some really tough times and you survived it. And you did it with grace and dignity, and you made all of us proud, and we came out ahead, just as Terry said. The district is better for it. So I just wanted to honor all of you, particularly Terry, for her length of service, and we were able to serve together for several years. We overlapped. Sherelle took my seat on the board. I was happy to have that happen. Jen, I didn't get to serve with you, but I know you've served with honor and dignity, and you've all worked so well together. And I know that will continue because that's so important for a board to really treat each other with respect. I know of a few other boards who shall remain nameless that aren't really doing that as well. So, and I know it will continue with the new people, but you've really set a wonderful standard for dignity and respect and perspective. So thank you all for your service.
Okay, do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, motion to adjourn. It should come from one of our outgoing board members.
Did I just say?
So moved.
So moved.
Jenny moves and Sherelle seconds. All in favor?
Please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are temporarily adjourned.
Say that.
I know.
I'm just ready for a break.
So we don't need to call to order this meeting because we were just.
When I was in high school, I had a.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
It was between my junior and
I was in Iowa State. My wife went to Iowa.
Where it says your name?
My wife went to Iowa.
And April. Cool beans.
So what am I saying?
We did, but we had a lot of downtime. We enjoyed being there.
That's pretty much what we're doing. It's 4 people. It's totally
And we're gonna break it up by this.
That's what I usually do in school.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, Julie, I didn't get
Like a sentence.
Okay.
Are you sitting right there?
I stopped the stream. We have a printed copy.
Okay, before we call the meeting to order, I need to administer the oath of office to our newest board members. That would include Chris as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if Chris, Katie, April, and Mike can stand with me, please.
There's a copy of the oath in front of you. You're right there.
Can you raise your right hand for me, please? And repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of Community High School District 99 in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability. You'll repeat after me.
I, Michael Risky, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of Community High School District 99 in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability.
I further swear that
I further swear that
I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board, retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district.
As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district.
I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Community High School District 99.
I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Community High School District 99.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework.
I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law.
I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law.
I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision for Community High School District 99.
I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision for Community High School District 99.
and I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead this school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
Congratulations. All right, Julie, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Be happy. Kara Caston.
Here.
Katie Courtney.
Here.
Ken Dawson.
Here.
Christopher Espinoza.
Here.
April Finnan.
Here.
Don Renner.
Here.
Michael Riskey.
Here.
Rihan Hashim.
Here.
And Jason Trejo.
Here.
Thank you very much.
All right, having a quorum, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item of business, we need to elect permanent officers for the new board as constituted. We're going to take nominations for president, then we'll take nominations for vice president, we'll take nominations for secretary, and before each, moving on to each office, we will vote on each office individually. So can I get a nomination for office of president, please?
I nominate Don Renner.
That does not need to be seconded, right?
No.
Do we have any other nominations? Hearing none, should that be a roll call vote, Julie?
We can do that. Yes.
Okay. Julie, then you can call the roll on the office of president.
Those in favor of voting for Don Renner for president. Kara Caston.
Aye.
Katie Courtney.
Aye.
Ken Dawson.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
April Finnan.
Aye.
Michael Riskey.
Aye.
And Don Renner.
Aye. Motion carries. Then next, can I get a nomination from the floor for vice president?
I nominate Kara Caston.
Thank you. Okay. Are any other nominations for vice president? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve Kara Caston as the vice president of the Board of Education of Community High School District 99? Somebody needs to move.
So moved.
Chris moves.
Second.
We don't need a second. We don't need a second on these.
It's a
Okay.
weird one.
Okay. All right, Julie, Chris moves.
Okay, thank you. Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
April Finnan.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
Michael Riskey.
Aye.
Kara Caston.
Aye.
Katie Courtney.
Aye.
And Ken Dawson.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. And then can I get a nomination from the floor for the office of secretary?
I nominate Julie Nidak.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, that was a nomination. Can I get a motion to approve Julie Nidak as the secretary of the Board of Education of Community High School District 99?
So moved.
Ken moved.
Thank you. Ken Dawson.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
April Finnan.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
Michael Riskey.
Aye.
Kara Caston.
Aye.
And Katie Courtney.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Item number 5. Julie, do we have any visitors?
No, sir.
Okay. Item number 6, establish a meeting dates and times. Can I get a motion from the Board of Education to approve the 2025-2026 proposed Board of Education meeting dates and times?
So moved.
Karen moves.
Second.
Ken seconds.
Thank you. Kara Caston.
Aye.
Ken Dawson.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
April Finnan.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
Michael Riskey.
Aye.
And Katie Courtney.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Item number 7, appointment of board committees and liaisons. So we have various committees as board members. I'm going to reach out to each of you individually about assigning those committees to each of you. I'm not prepared to do that as of yet. I've had some initial and preliminary discussions, but I'd like to talk to some of you who I've not yet had discussions about what committees you'd be interested in. So in the interim between tonight's board meeting and probably the next board meeting, I'll be reaching out to each of you individually, and then we'll collectively assign each of you to the committees. Okay? Item number 8, I'll turn this over to you, Dr. Thiele.
All right, before we get started, welcome to our new board members, and welcome to all to a new board of education group. Congratulations, Don and Kara, on your positions as officers. I look forward to working alongside of you in the coming weeks and months and years. So thank you for giving of yourselves and taking this volunteer unpaid position on. And as you heard from Terry, you know, your families are also committing to that commitment as well. I thank them for allowing you to spend time supporting the students, staff, and families of our district. So with that, I'm going to turn this over. Do you want the clicker, Ryan?
Yes.
I will turn this over to Ryan Doherty, our Director of Student Experiences, to go into the survey that was given around athletics and activities.
Hi, my name is Ryan Doherty. I'm Director of Student Experiences, if I haven't met you. My nieces went through North. My parents live in town. I work for the district, so I'm triply invested. So you're also going to see a lot of me. I'm told that I can be verbose, and so I'm going to try to move it along because I know you have a long agenda tonight. So first, you're going to see me twice. This first one is for a survey that we give every 2 years. It's for Board Policy 6.195, in which we check on students' participation in extracurricular activities. We also ask about their interests and also possible reasons why they may not be involved. So for this survey, several years ago, we gave the survey separately. We started combining the survey because when we gave the survey separately, we had about 350 students respond. And as you can see, we have 2,675 responses from students this year. We had 2,683 last year, so it's pretty consistent. Also, number of family responses last year was about 430. This year, about 700. And staff went from 318 to 295. So all of the numbers are pretty consistent. One of the first things that we do is we ask students about their participation. Those of you that have students in the district, you know they're heavily involved, and that doesn't mean just in a District 99 activity. So we do ask a range of questions. The very bottom, yes, I'm involved in a current club or sport. 896 from North and 933 from South indicated yes. Now, that is of the 2,675 students that responded. Remember, we have about 4,600 students in the district, so this represents about 56% of the students across the district. We do have a lot of students who are involved in club sports. If you follow IHSA, I know there's something going through right now that would talk about students being involved in a club sport while also being in a school sport. We'll see if that passes. But right now, students who are involved in club sports during that season, they're choosing between one or the other. So those students would not be participating with us. And also, we just have students who don't want to be participating after school. They're in jobs, they have responsibilities outside of home. Also, there's a lot of students who participate with their friends in either a band or they're gamers, and you'll see that in some of the other responses that come through. We also ask them if there's any sports or activities that they would like to see. I embedded 2 sports that are coming next year already to see if that students would indicate other interests. You can see though, once flag football and boys bowling came up on the roster, there are a lot of students who are interested in that. And so those responses were simply like, I can't wait for flag football. Competitive pickleball and boys flag football also came up. I highlighted them in yellow. We do have pickleball clubs at both schools currently, and the reason we don't have flag football is because we already have football for the boys sport. So girls flag football is the partner to that. Surprisingly, boys badminton came up as a top getter. Some of the responses were, I'm not interested in boys badminton, but the guy next to me asked me to write this down. So of those 66, it's difficult to tell how many of the 66 are individual students who would participate. But that is a sport that is beginning in sort of a club level up north. Oftentimes when you see something hit Stevenson and New Trier, eventually it trickles down to us in 3 or 4 years. We will see how that goes. And the next survey that we ask, that might be a sport that comes up. I also highlighted HOSA. We have a HOSA at North this year. At South, there's a medical professionals club that is starting for next year. And so those clubs are active, so it's nice to see that students are looking to get involved. For this question, we asked families if they're satisfied with what we offer at school and how do they feel about communication. You can see that about 95% of the families rank it a 3, 4, or 5. I do want to point out the math. You might be thinking, how can that possibly add up to 100%? We have multiple families with multiple grade leveled students. So you can see the 83% in the 5s. The student parents who responded to the survey that were very pleased about the activities that we have. They have multiple students who are here, most of them with 2 students, but we do have some families that have 3 students, 9, 10, and 12, or 9, 11, and 12. Off to the side, we also ask what their students participate in outside of District 99. You can see sports, specifically over the summer, is a huge getter. Also for sports that are cut sports, you will see those kind of hitting the top of the list. Baseball is something that was pretty popular. Also the number of students who are involved in youth groups. Scouting also makes a strong push, and also performing arts programming, whether or not that be it like Ghost Light Theater in town, or if that's private music lessons, that comes up quite a bit. Also, we ask students, do you feel there's enough activities to participate in, and is school a place where you feel like you belong? Again, over 90 to 95% of the students are indicating a 3, 4, or 5. And then also, we wanted to know why they might not be participating. It is in percentage order. Some of them, they're not going to change, right? Students who are focused on academics, that may fluctuate for a year. A lot of our 9th grade students focused on academics because they're getting into their school year. There was also a surge in that with our juniors. But then also lack of motivation. Our senior class indicated lack of motivation several times. And then transportation did come up, not in the top 5, but sometimes the length of the activity bus going home can be an obstacle for some of our students who don't have personal transportation either with their parents or with a friend to drive home with. Finally, in our regular survey, we also ask staff about participation. Do they feel like we provide adequate resources for our students to participate? And also, do you see a positive school climate because of participation? About 90% of the staff, again, 3s, 4s, or 5s. So from the activities and athletics range, it's all pretty consistent with 90 to 95%, which we're really happy about. And we followed up with that. Checking on students who weren't involved. It's nice to know that the students who are involved and the families who are involved are happy with that involvement, but we also wanted to do a little bit deeper dive into why might students not be involved. So we did run an activity and access for students who are not involved. It involved the access teachers speaking with students about their involvement. Why might they not be involved? You can see the interview kind of questions that we have up there. And then when we did the interview at South, we did not have an extra question that some of our teachers at North felt like we should add. Do you feel a sense of belonging at DGN? That was something that we asked because we wanted to see if there was still a consistent tie between participating and not participating and their sense of belonging. And so we were able to dig into that a little bit. The result of this work drives our indicators and measures, which the activities and athletics team are in charge of. And so since we were talking about participation, rather than separating it out with the other indicators and measures presentation that I'll be giving later, we put that here. some of the data before I turn it over to my team. I just wanted to let you know how many students we interviewed. So at North, we had about 515 students who are not currently on a roster for an activity or sport. And at South, it was 881. After we did the interview, we found that 60 students reported they're active outside, as South is 102. But more importantly, we discovered about 110 students at North who were unrostered, so they were participating in an activity, but they weren't on the roster yet, and about 81 students at South. Most of those students, I'd probably say about 75% of them, were spring sports. They hadn't finished tryouts for baseball yet. Track was just starting up. Kids were still in transition. The others just did not actually finish the registration process, and so we were able to do that with them to get them registered. Also, you can see just lack of interest or lack of motivation from our students. That came across in both surveys. So we do know that there is a student population both at North and South that while they have the opportunity to, they've just indicated like they're just not interested. So you can see at the very bottom, do you feel a sense of belonging? So of the 515 students that we interviewed at North, 29 of them felt like they did not feel a sense of belonging at North, while the other students overwhelmingly did. So that is something for us to dig into next year. When some of us were in high school, that was the biggest sense of belonging that you got, was the club or the sport that you were involved in, and most of us may have had all of our friend groups tied to that. Things clearly have started shifting. So of the uninvolved students, many of them still feel like they belong at North. And we will look forward to adding that question at South so we can try to figure out where that sense of belonging comes from, so that for the students who aren't involved, we can help them get to that same spot that the other students have indicated. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the activities and athletics team. So that they can talk about, now that they've gone through that data, what are they doing with it, what are they currently working on, and what are they looking to do for next year.
So before we start our formal presentation, we thought it would be nice to introduce ourselves. So I'm Jennifer Martinez, and I'm the Director of Student Activities at South High. Thanks for having us here tonight.
Dave Rose, the Associate Principal for Athletics at Downers Grove North.
Good evening, everyone. I am Mark Marindola, Director of Student Activities at North.
And Brandon Murphy, Associate Principal for Athletics at Downers Grove South. As we get going through our slide presentation, we're kind of going to bounce back and forth, so you're going to see a lot of us kind of randomly going up to the mic. But first, right off the bat, as Ryan tries to sneak out of the room, we really want to show some, it's like magic. That's exactly what he did for us this whole time. So you're going to hear a lot of this as about the process of what we did. This is the first time we've ever taken this big of a dive into the data, specifically on that second portion, where we got to find the answer of why students maybe weren't involved. Not just the first data, which we do, I think, every 2 years. This last one was the first time we started this process. So really grateful for Ryan for leading us in this journey. And you'll see as we go through the slide, there's a lot more involved than just us four up here as well.
So involvement is really important to District 99. So whether we're talking about activities or athletics, our goal is always that students are involved in 2 or more activities so that they're prepared for college and career readiness. But also we want them to have that sense of belonging that Ryan was talking about earlier. And so that involvement piece is just important to get kids connected. And we know that when they're involved, they're also going to do better academically. So we're always looking at how can we improve those things.
It was really exciting for us to get a hold of this data. In previous years, a lot of it was anecdotal. Some of it was assumptions that we were making about students and their involvement. Some of it might have just been from very, casual conversations that we've had with students, parents, about the reasons they're involved or perhaps not involved. But this was the first time that we were able to really get some comprehensive data to really drive our decisions and to, for us to have a lot of conversations about what we're doing and certainly the things that we could be doing better.
Yep. So what we're going to get into in the next couple of slides is what the data actually led us to and the action steps that we were able to take and we're in the process of taking kind of our approach here as we continue through data collection and getting kids involved and having those conversations.
So we were happy to see the results from the survey and from the survey that told us that most of our students are involved in some form of activity in District 99. And the data also really affirmed our beliefs, as Ryan was talking about some of the reasons why there's barriers to why people are not involved in something that's affiliated with District 99. They're still maybe involved in other things outside of school. So we knew that, but now we had something to tell us a story about where are some of the areas that we can focus on, because how he just said, like, maybe someone's like focusing on academics or that they have a lack of motivation. Maybe some of those percentages are going to be a little harder for us to dive into and help change those behaviors or those areas of lack of interest for being involved in District 99, but others that we could look at to be able to start figuring out what is the story behind this and what can we change to just continue to improve the opportunities for our students in District 99.
So I want to echo one more time, just thank you to Ryan, because this deep dive, what it allowed us to do is that one-on-one access discussions, which we were not able to do in the past. And just to go a little bit more into those one-on-one discussions in the past, like we've mentioned, we had a pretty good idea of why kids weren't involved, what they were interested in, things like that. But the data definitively told us what they're interested in, and more specifically what kids weren't involved. So those one-on-one access conversations allowed teachers during access classes to have those one-on-one discussions with kids and figure out maybe things that we didn't offer that there was potential to offer, and then more importantly, what were potential obstacles to those kids that we could hopefully address and get those kids involved moving forward.
And then as you see, kind of to stick with the gratitude, it takes the statement, it takes a village. You can see on here all the people that really are involved with just getting us to the day. Our equity committee was involved right off the bat. We met with them before we even did any surveys or any kind to make sure we're asking the right questions and make sure we're targeting everybody appropriately. ASC, our tech teams, teachers, coaches, and in our athletic and activities department, all the way to our executive administrative assistants. They are the ones, as you mentioned with Ryan, that we were able to find 102, I think it was the number at North, and 81, I think it was at South, that were involved that weren't collected, because this data for that second survey was done right prior to spring season. So we didn't want it, we wanted this baseline data to be 100% accurate, the best we can make it. Because this is the first time we're doing it, and this will be the baseline that we can move off on for years to come now. So by doing that and going through it fine-tooth, we know exactly why with all the numbers to anyone that was involved. And having that one-on-one access discussion really, as they said, puts that story but and assumptions away. When you have students and you ask them why, and not just thinking, well, it's not just a percentage anymore. It's an actual answer from their mouth of telling you exactly why they may not want to be involved or what they're involved in elsewhere. And that's what we saw a lot of times. They are involved with something, just maybe not in our building at the time.
So as you all probably know, one of our core values in District 99 is belonging. And at Downers Grove South, like, we have belonging everywhere as part of our motto, from t-shirts to logos on our walls. And then, as Ryan mentioned, there was a portion of the survey for Downers Grove North that they actually asked a specific question about, do you feel a sense of belonging at DGN? And so that's just really important to know, that students that might not be recognized in the survey as somebody that's involved in a organized sport or activity at Downers Grove North or Downers Grove South still has a sense of belonging. And there's other ways in which our students can be connected to staff and other students by things that we're able to put on during the day. Because life has changed so much in a high school that there's not just the things that are happening after school. It's how can we provide experiences for our students to be involved during the day, especially in our new beautiful commons, to be able to provide experiences for them that are sometimes like organized by adults and sometimes organized by other clubs or sports. So whether we're talking about a spirit week or we're talking about, sales, like our Key Club was just selling like Kiss a Senior Goodbye. So whether it's a fundraiser or an experience, we just had Culture Week last week at Downers Grove South. So all the things that we're doing in Teacher Appreciation Week, all these things that like provide a way for kids to get involved and connected and talk among their peers, that those are like the small impact events that are happening during lunchtimes, in addition to the big, large impact events when you're at the community football game and you see the stands fully packed, or your homecoming dance or your prom dance that just happened for both of us these past 2 weekends. But opportunities for kids to get involved, even if they're not involved in an organized like sport or activity, they're in an experience of something that's happening on campus.
And I just want to add that one of the things that we've been really working on within the last year, both with working with Ryan as well as some others, is just removing those barriers for students to join different types of activities. Whether it's the barrier of them registering for us to get this accurate information, whether it's the barrier of them receiving that communication, knowing the opportunities that exist. We want to make it as easy and as straightforward as possible for students as well as their parents and guardians to know exactly the opportunities that exist and for those students to be able to take advantage of those things. So for us, it's a lot about the communication that we have, and I know communication is going to be something that you're going to continue to hear from us, but also just the ease in students to join a club. If there's not a club that's of interest to them, students understanding what that process is to start a new club. Helping students kind of navigate that and identify things to be involved in. So those are certainly some of the things that we've been working on in the last year, but in particular this year as well, to make it as simple as possible for students.
Sorry. I was just going to say, going off of what Mark said, when we looked at this survey data, but then also the opportunity for kids to start new clubs, and Ryan had already mentioned it, but two things that come to mind for both North and South are HOSA, or the High School Alliance of Future Physicians, and pickleball. So both are emerging clubs at North and South, so it's able to look at the opportunity for kids to voice what's maybe missing in the building and what we can afford them a new opportunity. So those things are good, being responsive to that. And then the other thing was there was one thing on there about, it was a low percentage, but sometimes we're trying to remove those barriers. So when we're talking about the finances that it costs for people to be involved, we also have something that we're very fortunate to have in this district called the Angel Fund. So students are able to apply if they're going through financial hardship or if they are on financial fee waiver, that then if they need something that the fee waiver does not cover, they're able to access that. So that's something we're really proud of too, so we can eliminate those barriers. So we're just always trying to enhance our sense of belonging for our students in both North and South.
Yes, no, that's good.
Bring this down. I don't know why I went so tall. So Dave and I got a privilege of being here on September 23rd to talk about kind of the state of where athletics are at the time. And so if you look at the left of this screen, that's what we kind of projected out, or that was actually what we presented at that time. And as a result of that, in the discussions leading, we started enacting 2 new programs. We saw this from the data we collected the year previously, a lot of that informal emails, things like that. But things that we take into consideration, besides just our surveys of our community, is also our local schools and the state. So there's a process to adding a new sport that isn't just here. We have to have someone to compete with. We have to have, and all these things. So as a conference, not only are we adding girls flag and boys bowling, but next year officially the West Suburban Conference, both those new sports, partially because we'll be adding, are actually going to be official sports within the conference next year as well. So full conference schedules will go into that. And a lot of these sports started as emerging sports under the IHSA. And some of the sports that are listed in our survey that maybe aren't quite where we're at yet are still considered emerging. He mentioned boys badminton, that's considered an emerging sport. We haven't seen a big uptick in our area with other schools take it from a club level to a sport yet, an IHSA sport, but that's where it's listed at currently. So that's the process and how that works.
You want anything here? You can go ahead. So as far as athletics goes, both at North and South, a few of the key takeaways that we got from the data was communication, opportunities, and removing barriers, which we've kind of touched on a little bit. But just things that we're focused on and we want to continue to grow within the athletic departments is the ease of registration, making sure it's very transparent and making sure it's very accessible to all of our students and all of our families. Our FanX app, which both schools have implemented this year, we're kind of in the infancy of those still, but it's going to be a great opportunity just to get that information out on a very easy and accessible platform for parents. Infinite Campus, which is coming next year, is going to provide a lot of opportunities again for making communication easy and accessible for our families, Parent Square, as well as the new website. And again, all these things, we just want to simplify it and make it easily accessible to all of our community members. And we think focusing on these platforms and keeping them specifically to these platforms will make it easy for families to access information and also to communicate to coaches, teachers, administration, and just kind of bring everyone together.
And the reason we mention that is if you're are not familiar, registration there's a lot of different levels to this. There's registration to school. Then there's registration for an activity. Then there's registration for athletics. To register for athletics, you have to also provide an athletic physical. So there's a lot of steps to that. So anything that we can do to streamline that and make it easier to find and communicate out, that helps our community and our families as well. So that's why we want to continue to make that a focus and a goal as we move forward. Opportunities. Obviously, we tell all of our students as incoming freshmen and non-freshmen the first day of school is the school that is today will not be the one in 4 years when you leave, because things that you come up with, you're going to change things. And as we just got new programs changing, that's because of the students that are currently here. And they're going to leave a legacy with that. So students that are entering, they're going to have different passions and different things that they want to see happen. And then we're the ones that are going to try to work on making sure that happens. What we do here, I think that's where boys bowling came in. That's where girls flag. We've done a great job. We've talked about co-oping last time we were here. We moved to a co-op for boys gymnastics, which is doing really well. They actually have sectionals this Wednesday and looking forward to state the following week for them. But that's us looking at our school district's resources and just making sure we can do everything we can to maximize opportunities to continue to benefit all of our students.
And then removing barriers. As far as transportation, minibuses, again, they've been implemented for a while, but it gives us a great opportunity to cut back on some of the transportation time, which, as Ryan mentioned, is kind of a concern for a lot of our athletes and our parents. Those financial options for athletics with the Angel Fund and waivers and things like that. And then kind of long-term is making sure that there's no language barriers that are present for any of our families. And that goes across the board, everywhere from registration to the information that's accessible on all those other platforms, making sure that all of our families have access to it.
So we just wanted to talk about a little bit of some of the best practices that we want to continue to do and make sure that we're thinking of new ways to do moving forward to continue to encourage connections and involvement for all of our students in District 99. So one of those things is, like, how are we sharing the good news of the opportunities that exist and making sure that students know what they can get involved in. So some of the things that we do, we have activity and athletic fairs at both schools. We have like our future Trojan and Mustang night for our incoming students in January. Conversations with students during new student orientation. So like at South, it's Mad Dash, and at North, it's their Positively North runs it. So they have their awesome freshman day too. We've had opportunities during Access to talk to students about the various activities that exist. We've had opportunities to go to like our transfer lunches. So at South High, I know specifically, we have our transfer luncheons. So once a month, the students that are transferring into our district have a lunch with the psychologists, counselors, deans to learn like how to navigate our school and transition into our school. But that's an opportunity to talk about the activities that exist. We've gone to AVID, our EL resource and breakout sessions. So just finding ways to reach out to all of our students to make sure that they know of all the things that do exist and making sure that we're having personal connections as much as we can, whether that's directly from us or from our student leaders or from coaches and sponsors. And so just continuing to get the information out there so that everybody is aware that they could come in August and not be interested, but maybe by January they are. And there's always something to be able to do and that they could get started doing.
Just to reiterate, with communication, something that we've all talked about, but that's something that we want to continue working on. And so you'll hear that over and over from us. We can never communicate, too well. There's always room for improvement. So that's something we're always going to be looking to do. The four of us are all members of the district's communications committee with the terrific Jill Browning and her staff. And so, we continue to meet and to identify ways that we can improve, whether that's stuff through the new website, which is really great, and we can do some really targeted stuff through the new website. The continued use of Parent Square, which will allow us to also translate into different languages, and just finding ways that we can be consistent and better with what we're doing. So again, all students, all families, parents, guardians know exactly the opportunities that exist, and that we can minimize those barriers for students to participate.
Next steps for us is to really continue collecting more data. Like I said, we have that baseline that we were able to use this year. We want to make sure that was accurate. And now we have that story. Now we can continue that journey with those students and see if there's things that we can improve upon to get them more involved. Many of them are involved. We see a lot of multi-sport athletes as well. So it's kind of really interesting that we were able to dig into that data as well. He talked about communication and barriers, and that's our biggest goal. So the reason we mentioned that multiple times through our back and forth conversation today is when we sat with Ryan, what are things when we look through the data? Well, the main thing is we want to look at things that we can actually control. And some of the things we can control is how we communicate and making sure we eliminate some of those barriers. So that's why you heard that over and over as a common theme. That language barrier, we have a plan in working with those, and that's what, including some of that new formats like the new website. We're hoping Infinite Campus will be an uplift with our registration as well. So these are things that we're really looking forward to. But this has just been a great year. We couldn't thank Ryan enough and everybody that was involved, from Access teachers, because without this data, it's step one, and it's well overdue for the fact that we now know something about each kid. We literally took every single student and talked to them, so it's very impressive.
So that's all we have. Just want to say thank you one more time. We are obviously very passionate about athletics and activities and what it brings to our students, but it means a lot that obviously the board and the community are equally as invested in it. So thank you for having us, and thanks for your time.
Any questions from board members?
So collecting data. Are you relying on the survey data? Is that the data you're referring to? So I guess my question is, if my daughter registers and becomes a member of the Empowerment Club at North with Karen Spar-Thomas, I mean, is that not collected? Is there are we using 5 labs, or is there some like software that's collecting this participation? Because it sounds to me like you're relying on the survey data.
Yeah, so we rely on multiple sources, but right now we're talking about the survey data that we got to be able to tell a story about our students and be able to dive deep into the data. Every year we're able to look at the registration data to see who is registered and know a story about the students that are involved. But by being able to take the school-wide survey, we just learned new things maybe about people that aren't currently involved and they're not on a roster for a club or a sport. And so then we're able to go in and dive a little bit deeper and talk to those students and have a one-on-one connection with the people that are currently not involved. And our students that are involved, whether it's us or our administrative assistants or teachers or their coaches or their sponsors, like they're already talking to them about the reasons why they enjoy being involved and why they love being connected to North and South. I hope that answered your question.
It does a little bit.
Okay, sorry.
Ryan, definitely, if not. There's 2 surveys, like in Ryan's beginning, there was a survey about the students that are involved and kind of how the reflection of how they're involved, how they feel. Right. The second one that we talked about right before we got on was the belonging activity. That's the one that we're primarily focusing on in our presentation, because those are the students that basically when we pulled all the rosters and all that, it's everybody. Your daughter wouldn't have been included in that one because she wouldn't have got pulled out because she's already involved. Mm-hmm. So this is every student that we were able to find out who wasn't involved, okay. And then we had one-on-one interviews with them, okay. And survey with them. So we use the word survey, but that was this belonging activity. That's the brand new one. Okay. The survey that he started with is the one we do every 2 years. Mm-hmm. So
but is there a database that like you can look up and say, my daughter Hannah Renner is on this club, this club, this club, and this club?
Yes.
Okay. And that's your starting point. And then from there, you were looking at the kids who are not involved in any activities, and then you were surveying them and interviewing them and getting feedback.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just ask about the barriers? So are they, I know you're looking at all of them, is there any prioritization of them, or some larger than others, or are you equally?
I think that's where we looked at kind of the controllables. What can we control within there?
Mhm.
You know, some of the students is, I just want to focus on my academics. That's great. Is that something maybe we're not going to try to change that? Others are involved, but they're in a club sport, so maybe that's not going to possibly change. So when I look at, one is transportation. Is there a language? Did they not know about, they didn't know how to get registered? Well, that's something that we can control, make sure that they know more about registration, faster, more often, more frequently. So those are some of the things that when we got through all the list of questions that Ryan asked them in those one-on-one interviews, we want to go through and can we actually move that needle at all? After school, I think we've had activity buses running after school now for at least 3 years, I believe. And
The 6:15.
at the second, yeah, so that
Because we have had the 4:30 bus for a very, very, very long time, but 3 years ago we added the 6:15 bus.
6:15 bus. But if you come, I know I can speak to South. For the amount of students that I sit around waiting for that 6:15 bus, to think if maybe a good chunk of them wouldn't have been able to be at the school because of that not having that offering, there's a lot of them every night. So I'm not saying all of them wouldn't have found a way, but there's a good amount that they're utilizing that bus. So that's one barrier that we eliminated over that time.
Do we have data about, I know you mentioned a correlation between participation in clubs and activities and sports and student achievement in the classroom. Do we actually track that data within D99? Meaning, like, if a student has 2 or more like clubs or activities, they are achieving at a higher rate than students that are not participating at that level?
We can track that. We don't currently track the correlation between the two. I think a lot of studies do show that.
Okay.
But I think more recently we've been tracking the sense of belonging students have and tied to their participation, and we're starting to see more students who have connections within the school and then those connections move outside of school where they don't need to be in the sport to find that to find that connection. But yes, I mean, we could, because we have all of the students on the roster, we could run a report and showing the correlation between grades and kids on the rosters pretty quickly.
You think it's the sense of belonging that leads to the higher achievement? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's hard to measure, right?
Yeah, it's because, for example, I mean, we know some very high achieving athletes that don't participate in District 99 sports because they're playing club sports or travel sports, and they excel at North and South just as much as the students who are on the D99 teams.
Yeah.
Oh, and still, from your data, say that they feel like they belong at school.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
But that's like the intangibles that they get to be involved in through like lunchroom activities, dances, other big school-wide events, that it's not connected directly to their sport or activity, but they're still participating in community. You know what I mean? Because there's lots of different opportunities to be involved that's not necessarily like tracked, you know what I mean, through data, but through their classes and through the feelings that they get from being involved with their teachers and their classrooms and connecting with their peers, they're still having that sense of belonging.
For sure. And the staff versus senior softball game this week, it's Wednesday, Thursday at South, right? That there are students who will participate in that and compete against the staff, and that sense of belonging, being able to compete and have 500 of your peers out there watching during the school day, that is a lasting memory that some of those kids have, and they may not be participating in a club or activity at North or South right now.
Yep.
One thing that we do informally, some of our coaches do this just for their own data, and I think it may answer one of the questions, is we don't always compare our students that are athletes versus students that aren't athletes or involved. What we do is sometimes take our students' GPA while they're in season, in the semester they're in season versus the semester they're out of season. So some coaches do track that to see if that helps, you know, further, because a lot of times it does prove that when they're in season, they actually do better in academics a lot of times. So some of our coaches do pull that data.
Okay.
I appreciate all of the work you guys have done to reduce the barriers for students, because I think that's a big issue when it comes to that extracurricular activity, especially when it comes to activity buses. I know, like, when I was a student, it was tough for me to find a time to get home after if I was going to join a club or something. So I appreciate all that. When it comes to the Angel Fund, the barriers when it comes to financial opportunity for students was low, which was good to see. How does the Angel Fund operate? Like how do we fund it? Can community members donate to it?
So the Angel Fund actually started in 2019. So in 2019, we were able to work with the Education Foundation and our community and leaders in the district to be able to do an initial opportunity for community members to donate money to the Angel Fund, which is then primarily for activities and opportunities, right, that are not covered by a fee waiver. So it could be for paying for summer school, or it could be because they don't have the money to pay for a yearbook. And so then it's really like a case-by-case basis, like through our counseling department and other teachers, like case managers from the special education department, that are able to like know a student's story and where students may need help, and then they're able to fill out that fund. And so then they're able to do that application and access things that they wouldn't have been able to access because they're not covered by funding through the school to offset those costs for your extracurricular activity or like items, right? So if you want to buy the extra apparel, or how I just mentioned, like the yearbook or a prom ticket or a homecoming ticket, things that are outside of maybe their budget and they want to be able to attend, we're able to help with. And so right now, I know the Education Foundation is going to be cooperating with us because our funds, for the first time since 2019, we were so fortunate to receive that money, and then we went through COVID, and so we weren't using it quite as much, and then things have finally gotten back to complete normal, and people are accessing it and using it so much more. So our funds are actually going to be depleted. And so the Education Foundation is helping us find avenues to replenish those funds, because it is a critical fund that is utilized to help, whether it's that extracurricular summer school opportunity for academics, or whether it's the prom night experience that they can remember for, forever and be involved in activities. So the Angel Fund has been a really critical fund that's really helped a lot of our students access things that they need to, that they wouldn't be able to access otherwise. So I hope that answered it.
I'll just add, this time of year with like senior events, homecoming time, stuff that maybe isn't completely necessary for a student to do, but honestly is kind of like a foundation of like their high school experience and being able to do things with their friends and to do these fun things that's part of the traditional high school experience. That's where we see a lot of the students putting in the request for the Angel Fund. So kind of the big times of year for us are like in the fall, around homecoming, and then towards the end of the year. And certainly we want to be able to grant those so that the students can participate, be with their friends, have those experiences. And I'm proud to say for just about every request that we get, we're able to grant those so students are able to participate.
And I just have to make one more connection, because we were talking about barriers and language barriers and like the financial pieces. So one thing I'm really proud of this year, like working with our equity team, there were some requests to help pay for some credit recovery for some of our EL students to be able to go to summer school. So that's awesome. Like we're able to provide the students that registration fee that they need to be able to go to summer school, to be able to acquire more proficiency in English here. And then that also will hopefully help connect students, right, to more activities and feel more confident by being involved in our things at Downer South and North. So it's all a win-win.
I think back to registration, though, I think that's great to hear. I think from my experience with my daughter in high school, that the coaches and activity leaders do a great job of promoting if you can't afford something. Like you see that all the time. And I just think the community, people who can afford to help if they knew kids, I 100% see what you're saying. Buying a yearbook, getting a prom dress, getting a prom ticket. Like, I don't know if that's something, I know there's a line item in registration for the foundation, but I think if community members knew that there's a fund and it's getting depleted and here's what it's for, I think our community would.
There'll be another push for that.
That's great, so.
And when it opened the first time,
There was overwhelming support, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we just haven't had to do a drive since then.
Yeah, which was fortunate, but then now people are, also staff members are becoming maybe more aware of it again, as like people are, it seems strange, but it feels, because COVID seems so long ago now, but at the same time, I feel like there's more questions, right? Because people are becoming, again, more comfortable for like everybody to be involved, so I feel like it's more resurfaced.
And when you brought up that question, it made us think, as we were analyzing the data and really dissecting it, there's a lot of parts that we were really proud of. So when those numbers are really low, that transportation, these are things that are pretty low. It's because of things that have already been put in place. So this
Yes.
Angel Fund's been since 2019, and it's been communicated up that it's being utilized, that maybe that's why that number is so low. And if it wasn't, it may be a lot higher. Same with the transportation. 3 years ago, they added that activity bus, and now that number is low. I don't know what that data was 4 years ago, but now we kind of know, and we're really happy with it being low.
Yeah. Is there an easy and discreet way for kids to access the Angel Fund? How
Yeah,
do they do
there's
that?
there's an application on the website, but usually students have conversations with an adult that they know in the building, whether it's their counselor, case manager, coach, teacher that they're connected to, and they're able to have those conversations, and then the adult is able to kind of guide them to find it, you know? So then it all happens that way, but I feel like it's always through a caring conversation that connects them easily to where that link is on the website.
Any other comments or questions? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, tonight is a night of feedback and going through that and looking at how that shapes our work as a district and how it will shape our work for next year. You can see that is a subset of it here in the activities and athletics, and kind of gives you a deep dive into that work. We're going to step back to kind of the 30,000-foot view and look at what our work will be focused on for the next school year holistically as a district, and how we come to that determination and recommendation to the board as to what it should be. To back up, a few years ago, we wrote a new strategic plan. Last year, we worked on identifying measures within that. This year, as you saw in this last presentation, was a focus on looking at those measures and data inside of it. And one of the things that we know about high-performing school districts, which we are and should continue to be and be better at, is that they focus on one thing at the highest level at a time. We can do many things in this district, but if we really want to move the needle on something and make a difference, it's going all in on something. As the superintendent, it really makes no difference to me what that thing that is that we all go all in on, but it's got to be a thing that we prioritize and really work diligently on improving. The goal is, now that we have a strategic plan, now that we have these measures, that we go out to our staff, our students, our families, and try to triangulate what it is that we should really focus and work on. As I said, as the superintendent, it makes no difference to me what that is. I'm happy to lead the district in whichever way our staff, students, families believe they need to be led. And so the exercise over the last several months has been, what are we going to pick? What is that thing going to be? So that would be our primary measure. There's probably, when you do this, likely one or two secondary goals that kind of support that primary one. And then, you know, we have 11 measures we're looking at. So if there's one at the top and a couple other that support them, then the rest of them are not important, right? They're still important, but you're not going to throw all your chips on the table on those. Your goal with those is don't go backwards, right? Maintain where you're at. And what we know from the research about high-performing schools is if you move that top measure, all of the others will move up right alongside with it. And the plan is, now that we're here, now that we have the strategic plan, now that we have the measures, now we have a process year over year to identify and have the board approve and select or challenge the selection from the stakeholders as to what that most important priority should be. And then once the board identifies that and approves it, the administrative team and everybody else go all in on moving that forward. This year, there's this whole process. This has been shared with the board in print before this, but really we're at the point of, working through the surveys and information to come up with a statement of work, which I will share with you at the end of this presentation. After that, tomorrow, I will send out to all of our staff and say, last night I presented this as the draft statement of work, and look for consensus amongst our staff that that is the right thing to work on for this year. I will come back on May 19th with the results of that feedback from our staff and ask you, I might tweak it based on the feedback we get, or might just reinforce, yeah, we're on the right path here. But on the 19th, I will ask you to vote up or down our recommendation for what we will work on next year. And then over the next year, you're going to get a lot of updates on that top priority. Where we started was first with our administrative team. We knew a bunch of other surveys were coming out soon, but before we got the results of those surveys back, we wanted to check in with the leadership team, which is all administrators and department chairs, and Josh, the DGA president, is part of that team as well, to see what did the leadership team think, like what does the leader's gut say is the most important thing, before we went out and asked everybody to see if the leadership team had its pulse on the feelings of our staff. The board and incoming board members were all part of this survey feedback, and you can see here up at the top, attendance by far, 35 comments, a total weighted comment score. So for each one you could pick, your top one was 3 points, your middle priority is 2 points, your bottom one was 1 point. So that is total comments, raw comments. They picked any one of those as their 1, 2, or 3. And then the weighted is that multiplier is added. You can see right now regular attendance from the leadership team is really up at the top. Then we kind of went through the data, used a little bit of AI to help look for some themes in that, and weighted comments. So if you said attendance was your top thing, then your comment got 3 points as well. So we could look at the priority based on the language that was used as well. Regular attendance overall across the leadership team and the board was the top when you added up all the points. Student interventions and supports was the top amongst the Board of Education. When you dig into those comments of student intervention and supports from the Board of Education, the great majority of them related to student attendance. Then culture of support and collaboration is really teacher morale, which you'll hear more, or staff morale, which is more, you'll hear more about that tonight. And then expected behavior from the leadership team was really high. About half of the comments in expected behavior were behavior related to attendance. Then there are 3 surveys that you're going to hear about tonight that were given out. So climate, this is the one that replaced the 5 essential survey. This is the state mandated climate survey. We use the comprehensive school climate inventory. This tool was also selected by the leadership team. You'll hear that tonight. We do an annual spring survey. This has evolved over the years, but last year in conversations with the board, it was important to have an outside entity analyze and provide feedback on that survey so that there was no question that like administration was putting their thumb on the scale, right? So it's completely an outside group that helped us develop the survey and then analyze it. Ryan will present on, the first one Jill will present on tonight, then the spring survey Ryan will present on, and then Rob will be here to present the second year or second set of data on our morale survey. The biggest takeaway that you're going to see from this, in the biggest part of this exercise, is verifying that the leadership team and the rest of the stakeholders in our organization both align with what the statement of work should be for next year, and I will share the results of that with you at the end after you have the opportunity to make your own conclusions. So with that being said, I'm going to invite Jill forward for the climate survey.
Hello, everyone. First, I just want to say thank you, as we've all thanked you for serving as board members. I've been a resident of Downers Grove for 24 years now, and I just appreciate all the work and everything that you do for our schools. I know there are long meetings, but sometimes there's cake too, though.
Oh, and by the way, Jill Browning is? Your role?
I'm Chief Communications Officer here at the district. I think I've met all of you and excited to be here tonight to present about the Comprehensive School Climate Inventory, which, as Hank said, replaced the 5 essentials. And as you may know, all schools districts in Illinois are required to issue a climate survey every year, and we have a choice between the survey tools. And for many years, we've used the 5 essentials. And it's similar to the CSCI. Both are state-approved surveys. They measure the perceptions of our school community, our families, our students, and our staff. Now, the important thing to keep in mind is that it's the student response rate. It's not the feedback, but it's just the student response rate that counts for our summative designation. So both of our schools are rated as commendable. So that is factored into that calculation. We cannot customize these questions. They are not open-ended. It's off the shelf from the company, and it takes about 20 minutes to complete. The differences with the CSCI is that it measures 14 dimensions, not just those 5, and it has in-depth survey questions about school safety, and we find that it's more relevant to a high school setting as well. It's also issued to all students, families, and all staff, whereas the 5 essentials was just the teachers. We're able to issue this to all staff. And as Hank said, the decision to switch came from the district leadership team. They reviewed both several different survey instruments, and here are just a few of the comments that captured their feelings, whereas the let's go for it, and the Board of Education also approved that change. The survey window is dictated by the state of Illinois, and that window is February 8th to March 28th, and I just wanted to put in when we issued it to students was March 19th and March 20th towards the end of that window, and we didn't get a lot of everyone then, so we were able to target and students who had not yet responded to the surveys, and we tried to get clever with some of our text messages. I don't know if you students received any of these, or maybe you were good and you filled it out.
They did it the first time, Joe.
They did it
Yeah.
the first time, so they weren't harassed, but we were borderline on harassment, but we tried. Our response rates are up there. They're similar to the surveys that Ryan has issued. 61%, and that was similar between north and south response rates. The staff, and you can see the teacher broken out down below. The DGN also includes T99, so that is not captured right there, but those are the separate response rates. So the majority of staff who responded were teachers, and then we got a strong family response rate as well. But unfortunately, the bad news is that it was not as strong students this year, and our response rates were lower than last year with the 5 essentials, so we'll need to take a look at that and how can we improve that student engagement for next year. The survey is definitely comprehensive. As you can see, these are just a few examples for each category, and the families in the audience probably, maybe you remember completing this survey as well, but it's very comprehensive, and you can see for the different categories that are listed, respondents were asked to strongly agree, which was ranked a 5, down to 1, that Likert scale. And you do have a handout, I should point out, that's Hank's showing you right now, that handout, and it provides more detail. So as far as the survey scoring, like I said, it's 1 through 5, and individual responses, a 4 or 5 are considered positive, 3 neutral, and then 2 or 1 negative. And then for those combined responses, as we go through it, and you can see down the list, 3 and above are generally positive, and then there's the neutral, and anything below 2.5 is considered negative. So as I said, there's the overall snapshot of all of the scores, and that represents all responses. And overall, it's pretty positive. We have a couple that are lower and a couple that are higher in the staff categories. And I'm just going to go through domain. There are 5 domains and then categories within that. And I'm just going to briefly highlight some key takeaways from that. So under safety, you can see is comprised of rules and norms, sense of physical security, sense of social emotional security, and online safety. And within each category as well, there's a score distribution, and we can kind of dig deeper into what is comprised of that overall number. So you see that the 3.0 for staff is a little bit lower, and we go into it and we can see the score distribution that 22% of staff responded negatively about rules and norms. So it's a lower level of sentiment, and this kind of had to do with the consequences issued for when people break rules as well. But for the most part, physical safety was very positive for across all audiences, and staff were more neutral on the social emotional security as well as online safety. For the domain teaching and learning, it was very high for support for academic learning as well as social emotional learning. And that 4.6 from staff is one of the highest. And again, just the general takeaways, it's very positive. All people feel the schools provide academic support and are encouraging, and for the social emotional learning that we help them to succeed. As far as interpersonal relationship, includes these categories: respect for diversity, teacher-student relationships, and peer relationships. You can see the 4.8 is the highest ranking, and that was by staff. But as we dug deeper, we looked at the details of the family responses, which was 4.1, but we saw that 20% responded negatively. So they marked a 2 or a 1 when it came to teacher-student relationships. And so that's something we'll need to dig into and find out more information of what's going on there. Institutional environment includes school connectedness. We heard all about how important that is, physical surroundings and social inclusion. And these were all very positive. The majority of everyone listed a 4 or 5. And then finally, the leadership and efficacy domain includes administration and leadership and collective efficacy. And this you can see is green. It was only a staff question, and that 3-point low is one of the lowest. But it was neutral too. When we drilled down, there were no negative categories with this question. 77% were neutral, even though it's a 3.2, and then 71% were positive about how they work with one another. And again, just more positives. People who ranked 4 or 5s, the majority in these categories, 100%, were students, staff, and families for support for academic learning, school connectedness, physical surroundings, and respect for diversity. But of course, then there are items to address, those rules and norms, which gets back to kind of the theme of the day. And teacher-student relationships we'll investigate further, and then administration leadership effectiveness. We'll be taking a look at that. And also with this survey instrument, we're able to have benchmark data from schools nationwide so that we'll be able to compare and look at that as we continue on with this instrument. So that is the CSCI.
Hello, I'm back. So if you saw me getting up gingerly, it's not because I'm reluctant to come up. It's because my 53-year-old back wasn't ready for all of the yard work this weekend. So as Hank mentioned earlier, we did have an outside consultant working with me this year. Insights Incorporated, CT Long was my connection. And this survey included the activity and athletic survey that I extracted and put into the other presentation. So you will see a reference to it later, and that is to the data that I had already presented. So before I get started, I did just want to kind of go through the process that we went through. In past surveys, I created the questions, I ran them through teams of administrators and teachers. This year it was different. Working with the outside consultant, we took the indicators and measures, and I ran an activity in our leadership team meeting. And instead of asking them for the questions they wanted asked, I asked them what did they hope to learn from the survey. And they gave me lists of things that they'd hoped that they would learn. I turned that information over to our consultant. They created the questions. They sent it back. I sat with the administrative team. They sat with their department chairs. They looked at the questions, gave me feedback. Some of the main feedback was it was clear that the consultant didn't quite know what capstone experience meant in education. So I did a quick call with them, gave them a couple of examples. They reworked their capstone questions. And then they created the platform for the survey and then distributed that survey. So they also then presented that survey data back to me and gave me the opportunity to drill down into that further. I presented at DLT last week, which is our district leadership team. I'll be presenting here. And then Hank, Courtney, and Arwen have asked me to meet with each department chair and also all of the other strategic indicator teams so that the activities and athletics team, you can see that I've already sat down with them. We've gone through the data and they've presented. That way they can look at the data as they're making their plans for next year. So I have a meeting with principals Dement and Lip on Wednesday to prepare for the department chair meetings that will then happen through the end of the year so that they can prepare how they're going to work on what their portion of the district goal is as they set those goals for the next school year. So for equitable and supportive environment, one of the things that comes out immediately is, sorry, did it go back? Oh, sorry, one last thing. I'm glad I clicked black. Okay, so a favorable response is a 4 or a 5. So if someone answers a 1, 2, or 3 to a question, it will not show up in the favorable responses. So when you see that data for favorable responses, just know that that is for a respondent who has chosen a 4 or a 5. 3 does not show up as a favorable response. So for our behavior in expectations, it's clear that the families and the students report that they understand what that behavior is, and they even say that they have trusted adults in the building, that they feel like their students are treated fairly. However, the staff reports how much they struggle with the behavior, and it's a significant difference between the two. So when we look at expected behavior, the first one is about the expectations. Do students understand the expectations? Do parents understand the expectations? You can see that that's a fairly high favorable response rate. Again, a 4 or a 5. However, the level of those expectations or the staff feeling like they can support positive student behavior is lower than 50%, and so that is very different from our families. But then also the consequences for the behavior. The staff really struggles with those consequences, and are they doing enough to, 1, correct behavior, or 2, specifically get students to class? Our relationship mapping was also part of that. You can see that 78% and 73% respectively with our families feel like there is a trusted adult that the students can go to during the school day. However, when we did the relationship mapping activity, the question we asked staff was, did relationship mapping make you more aware of students who need that connection? About 30% of our staff reported a favorable response there. So whether or not they had a deep understanding of those connections already, or if we need to communicate better out the students who need more connection and make the staff more aware of those connections, that's something that we may need to work on. And then also, questions about students' belonging. We asked students on this survey as well, because we weren't able to ask that on the activity that we did with our South kids. So this was added. Do you feel a sense of belonging? So across District 99, 67% of students, whether or not they're currently involved in an activity or not, we don't know. It's an anonymous survey. But of the 2,675 kids who responded, 67% of them said that they do feel a sense of belonging in our schools. Student engagement in 4-year planning is a pretty positive response. So there's a high level of guidance given from families and teachers, and also that the vertical integration. So if I'm taking classes, does one class lead to another that lead to my career goals? Am I choosing classes based on my interest in career goals? Families report a higher connection than the staff do. So when we look at capstone experiences, this is something where we ask the students and the families and the teachers, are students able to demonstrate their learning from throughout the year at the end of the course? 63% of teachers report that, 65% of students, and 70% of families. Going into this question is going to be important in our department chair meetings because some departments have moved away from final exams. Therefore, their chairs would not expect that number to be high, whereas others would expect that to be high. So we'll be digging into that number a little bit more specifically, especially as final exams have shifted over the last several years. 4-year plan. It was exciting to see that 91% of our families say they talk to their students about choosing their courses with their secondary plans in mind and also their interests. And 75% of the staff also provide that guidance. That's a pretty significant number because when teachers are giving that guidance, they're mostly talking about what class they think is the next in the sequence for that student. But beyond that, they also report 75% of them chose a 4 or 5, in indicating that they're also talking to them about their secondary plans and interests in courses that they have. As far as alignment, students and families report at a higher rate that they choose courses that align and build upon courses that they've already taken. We are actually working on developing career pathway documents, so that helps students and families as they're choosing that. If they're thinking of a career or a major in mind, that will have documents that will help them build those courses more consistently. And our staff, asking them, are their courses vertically aligned so that an intro course will align and refine the skills when they're getting into more advanced courses? About 59% of the staff report that. Whether or not that's because of tied to their post-secondary goals or if it's just refining skills for the next course, that's something for us to dig into as we continue to look at the data. So growth of student ownership and agency, the activities supports I've already talked about. However, attendance is going to be, again, one of the big stress points in the survey data. So beyond the activity and athletic data, we asked about interventions and supports and how aware are families about them, and specifically, is there something that you wish to see in order to help improve the communication of them? And so email communication improvements was the top one. Counselor communication also came up, but only at 7% of the responses. So for 700 families that responded, the fact that more families did not choose counselor communication just goes to show how strong of a connection our counselors have with our students. For regular attendance, however, you can start to see some pretty significant stress points. The lowest indicator for positive responses from the staff is attendance. So school provides adequate support for students' attendance. And so that's at 11%. Earlier, you saw consequences at 15%. Those two, as you heard from Jill and as you heard from Hank earlier, those are some of our touch points that we need to work on. And if you look at what students say, 56% of the students feel motivated to attend class regularly. And so that does support our staff's concerns about attendance. And then also finding benefits to attending class every day. That while that's higher, 71% of the students who responded, we would like to see that much higher than that. Our families do talk about understanding the expectations and feeling the support and know how to support their students with their attendance. So we know that the families don't feel that barrier. So that is something that we'll be working on and looking at internally. For our recruitment for highly qualified staff, staff feel equipped to teach their courses. They find that they have enough resources, but PD still comes up as something that has become a concern. Last year, we saw stronger numbers with our personalized professional learning, and because of that, that question didn't necessarily need to come up. The staff overwhelmingly said last year that personalized professional learning wasn't their concern. It was building level PD, and that does come up again this year. So some of our highest numbers from the staff, 83% and 81% respectively, talking about the skills and resources that they need to effectively perform their job responsibilities, to making meaningful impact on their student work. So the staff is feeling good about the work in the classroom that they're doing. But when they're looking at professional development, we ask them a couple of different things. One, how they feel about the professional development in their building, and then the lower positively rated response was, in the last 6 months, did you have a professional development opportunity that made a meaningful impact on your work? 24% of the staff responded positively to that. And so that does show an area of growth. We also asked them what are future PD topics. Again, you can see attendance, so strategies for getting students to come to class. That is one of the top ones. Infinite campus, yes, absolutely. And accountability, you'll see once again, comes up. We did also ask them when they like to have their professional development. That on a regular day, that becomes one of our lower positively responded comments, but Institute Day, you can see, is that large part of the pie. For general feedback, we asked students what would you feel the school could do better to help you in your learning journey. 25% of the kids wrote nothing, or IDK, something like that. That reduced workload does tend to come up. Engaging teaching methods. Several students also talked about having a shorter day or even later start. A large percentage of the students either also did not have anything. If it was left blank, it is different than nothing. And also, if it was a non-school appropriate response, I left that in the blank category. So. We also asked how likely you are to recommend your school district to your friends as a place to work or as a place to send your students. If a respondent answers a 0 through 6, they're categorized as a detractor. That's a business term. Often at times that's where are we going to put our advertising dollars? If someone's asking about our product, how likely are they to promote us? If they answered a 9 or a 10, they're categorized as a promoter, which means they're more likely to say yes and to talk up the district, or to send their students or a place to work. As we know from all of the different bystander training we do with students, most people are considered passive, right? That they're more willing to smile and be silent. So how do we get our passive families or employees to become a promoter, or if they're a detractor, where they're more likely to say something negative, how do we get them into passive or promoter? Personally, I prepare kids for testing, either whether it's the ACT or the SAT, and I always say, I'm not trying to get you from an 18 to a 36, I'm trying to get you an 18 to a 21, or a 24 to a 27. And so our goal really is to, how can we choose something that's going to impact staff, students, and families to move them from one category to another, whether that's from an 8 to a 9 or a 6 to a 7. So this is the data that they gave me. You can see that 26% of the staff indicates that they're a promoter. So they chose a 9 or a 10, and 39% of the staff saw themselves as a detractor. Well, not saw themselves as a detractor, chose 0 through 6, which categorized them as a detractor. That's very different from our families. 62% of the families chose a 9 or a 10, whereas only 10% chose a 0 through 6. I'm a data person at heart. I don't know if there's any other data people in the room. Anybody? Anybody? Okay, well, I wanted to dig into it a little bit more because I feel like this sort of like glosses over what the real number is. And so because I had access to that data, I did want to, I made a commitment that I wouldn't change their slides. This is what they gave me. So I added this. These are the numbers of staff who voted 0 or 1 or 2 or 3. And you can see that for DGN families and GGS families. So you can get a sort of a larger picture of where we are. If our goal is to move our 5s and 6s to 7s and 8s, among our staff, it's about 58 people that we're looking at trying to move up. Obviously, we would love to eliminate the 0s through 4s and to help them move up as well. But we're also equally as interested in making sure that the 102 people that are sitting in the 7s and 8s, what is it that we can do with a singular focus that will help move them into 9s and 10s? You can see that there's also families who are in 0 through 6 range, but there are larger numbers that you'll see in 8s, 9s, and 10s with our families. Also, we asked what were the recommended action from the staff. The process for the consultants was to look at a comment and then take a step back, sort of that 30,000 foot view that Hank mentions, and say, okay, what is the theme that comes out of this question? So you can see the number of responses, including blank responses, will equal the number of participants, and it also gives the percentage breakdown. Now, for me, I feel like when you look at data in large batches like that, it's also good to mine it so that you can see, is it really telling this true story? So this is the same data, except broken down into number of mentions. The reason is that if I have a comment that the question was asking one thing to improve your school, many of the responses said, I know you asked for one thing, but here are 3 things. And so in doing it this way, all 3 of them get counted rather than going into the larger theme of that connection. So in doing that breakdown, student accountability was mentioned just over 140 times in all of the different comments. Student consequences, just over 120 times. Cell phone policy, and then attendance and commons management and oversight, just over 100 times. This becomes thematic because the staff, it's all combined together, right? Student accountability to class, consequences that are consistent, that students feel that pressure to come to class, not only for their learning, but because it's expected. If the student is in the comments, how are we getting them there? And that while we have a cell phone policy, that having a stricter one, because that is a concern for staff. So we broke it down to make sure that you knew where the amount of comments there were within the larger responses. Also, I thought it was important to see in general, like what's the summary of what that means. And so increased student accountability comes up. That is around behavior, it's about attendance, students having academic effort while they're there, respecting school rules. But then also the second one about ensuring consistent enforcement of consequences. Skipping class, tardiness, all of those are still attendance related, but it starts to go into then that tripping into general misconduct. Wandering and lingering in the commons, those are quotes. I put quotes around them because that came up several times, and really helping students find a productive use of free time, and if we can't, how do we make sure that they are supervised during that free time, comes up from staff as well. So this is sort of a summary of the comment breakdowns. of the larger categories. I tried to keep the header the same so you can see the through line there, but that is the result of the District 99 survey. Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm here to give a quick update on our morale survey that we have with our partner firm EAB. For those of you who are new, 2 years ago we decided to partner with this research firm EAB because they have a framework that helps us to quickly identify and diagnose what's going on with morale for our staff and then get right to work on improving it. So one thing that they do for us is through their research is they broke this nebulous term of morale down into 6 different categories. And they tell us that the goal of the process is to go through the survey. We did focus groups last year and identify one of these categories and get straight to work on trying to improve that, with the goal being that every year we improve one of those and then hold the line on each of those, and the following year we improve another one until we have all of them improved. So this is where we were. Similar to the other surveys that you saw, it's a 1 through 5 scale. 5 is ranked as very satisfied, 1 is ranked as very dissatisfied. We administered the survey in October 2023, so with this survey now we have longitudinal data with the same questions to measure our progress. So in October of 2023, we had 392 of our staff members take the survey. Their average responses were put together in these 6 categories, plus our last one around measurement and progress. And you can see where they ranked. So a majority of them were ranked at neutral, right in the middle of the responses. Our 2 categories around personal safety and belonging and time and resources, they were ranked positively at a 4, with 5 being the highest. So with that, we went through a whole process with our district leadership team, with our teachers in the focus groups, and identified the category that we wanted to focus on this year to improve, and that category was the ownership and input category. So our goal was to move it from a 3 at a neutral up to a 4 or a 5, a satisfied or a very satisfied. So of those 6, we were targeting ownership and input across all of our staff. And this is where we're at. So we administered it again in April of 2025. We had more staff participated in this time, so 412. Unfortunately, we didn't do enough to move that needle to make it up to the 4. So we're still at a neutral there for our ownership and input. But an average number like that across everything doesn't really tell the full story. So what I did is I broke it up by our employee groups. So the category of ownership and input really comes down to 4 questions out of our 26 questions on the survey. Those questions you can see on the left side. The question of I have ownership and control over my professional practice and my work environment. I drag that across to our different employee groups. So some differences of what you can see year over year is that our DGA group on average went from a neutral up to a agree or satisfied. And then our support staff group went from a 4 down to a 3. So those sort of canceled each other out on that one. My opinions are heard and valued by district leaders. You can see our CMG group went from a 3 to a 2 on that. Stayed at the 2 for our DGA group. Our exempt group went from a 3 to a 2. And then with our SSA group, that stayed the same. Everything stayed the same for question number 4, which is my opinions are heard and valued by school leaders. And then our last question, in my current role, I get to do what I do best every day. The only change that we had was that our CMG group moved from a 4 up to a 5. So that's the highest rating that we had on any of those. So that category that we targeted for improvement came down to these 4 questions, and you can see how we progressed on those 4 questions for that category. I went through and similar to what Ryan was talking about, the 4s and 5s positivity ratings. So of those 4 questions, I went through and showed us how the positivity changed for each of those. So on our first question, we had a 7.9% increase in the positivity on that response. On our second question, we went backwards a little bit, so we had a negative 1% on our positivity for that question. For our third question, we had a 2% increase in the positivity. And then in our fourth question, we had a 5.8% increase in the positivity. So some moves within the questions that impact that category of ownership and input. So again, we didn't meet the goal, but there are still some successes for us to celebrate this school year. I put this in our last slide here. In your report, I have every question and how the change in positivity happened between the two administrations. But these were the questions that we had the top 5 with the highest positivity increase. So you can see our very top one, that's the one I want to point out to you, a 10.3% increase in the positivity rating on there. I want to point that one out because that's the one question that really gets at the heart of the staff and their relationships with each other. And it's a testament to the work that they're doing. We have this positive psychology Orange Frog workshop that our teachers lead. And I was meeting with them today. They're doing a part 2 of their training in this room tomorrow. And I just showed them the data to see that they are having an impact on the relationships that staff have with each other. So overall, that's the presentation. We did have some increases. And then for our one goal for this year for ownership and input, unfortunately, we didn't make that goal.
Thank you, Rob. All right, so what do we do with all of this information that we just shared with you? You remember at the beginning I talked about triangulating our work for the next year and making sure that we are, you just saw, morale in the district is around ownership and input. So it's really taking all of this input and feedback that you just heard and putting it into action in what we do next year. So just to review, board and DLT collectively identified improving attendance, and those were those critical areas. You saw in Jill's feedback, climate and culture are overall positive across the district, and the staff have identified similar critical concerns as the leadership team across the district. So the good news is that the leaders and the staff are in lockstep together as to what they believe needs to be improved across the district. So this is the proposed statement of work. This is what I'm going to ask every staff member in the district tomorrow to give me like a thumbs up, yes, thumbs sideways, yeah, I agree, but I have some concerns, or thumbs down, I don't think this is what we should be doing next year. And I will come back to you on May 19th with what the consensus is across the team and what the themes were in their feedback. But this is what I am proposing, and I will be asking maybe with some modifications on this based on staff feedback on May 19th for the board to approve as our focus, our singular, most important focus for next year. So you can read it up there. Primary focus will be improvement in the areas of attendance. Improvement will be driven by increased accountability and consistency in consequences, paired with appropriate interventions and support. Please note that that was the board's top priority, interventions and supports. Through this work, we believe that student academic performance will increase, along with staff morale and what you just heard. This will be demonstrated through these indicators and measures that we've been reporting out on. It is somewhat unfortunate that one of our pillars in this around ownership and input feeds into the statement of work and isn't gathered after we share the statement of work with the staff. I strongly believe that once the staff sees this, they will see that they had ownership and input into our work for next year. Timeline and next steps, this consensus over the next week. I will request the board to approve either this statement of work or a revised statement of work based on staff feedback. And then this will guide all of our planning for next year. We anticipate, based on all of this feedback, that attendance will be our primary focus, as I have here in the statement of work. Rob mentioned EAB as our research and thought partner in morale, but they are overall there as a resource to provide us information in all areas of improvement. We have a full administrative team meeting planned for the morning of the 20th with EAB to come in and present on. They've done a great amount of research on what makes a difference in attendance, in improving attendance post-pandemic. We will hear from them the morning of May 20th, as we plan our work coming back on May 29th to start digging into our statement of work. We will plan on bringing you detailed work plans at our board meeting in June in response to this. Questions on, you've gotten a lot there, but the big 30,000-foot takeaway is really this, right? All of that leads to this. Happy to address anything in here or meet with anybody outside of this. Ryan, Rob, Jill can answer any specific questions, or we can follow up based on this as well. So the floor is yours, board, for any questions you may have.
So I have a question on how do the indicators feed into the
Statement of work?
Yeah, so just since
Yeah,
we've now
so-
baselined most
yeah.
of them, right? So is there,
I'd say your through lines are that board and administration identified attendance.
Mhm.
And you see in Jill's presentation around climate that norms and rules and consequences all rise up in the climate area. You also see that there's low rankings there in the belief that we as an administrative team have a plan to address this. Trying to demonstrate that to everybody. By the time they hit middle of June, they'll see what the plan is for next year, right? You see in Ryan's feedback, the lowest indicators for staff were around the area of attendance.
Okay.
The mid indicators for students were around seeing value in having good attendance. So that's a through line that pulls there. And if you look at what Rob presented, clearly district leadership and the faith in that is the lowest of all of those indicators, right? So this is our good faith effort to show that we have heard that feedback, we are addressing it, we have a plan, we have heard their concerns, and now our administrative team members, as Ryan mentioned, from department chairs to each of our teams on the indicators, will be sitting down with Ryan to dig into that data around what was that specific feedback and what will move the detractors to passives, the passives to promoters, and what do we need to do to keep the promoters where they're at. We'll look at that by department, we'll look at that by indicator, and that will shape our work, you know, from the district level all the way to each department. So that's kind of how it all ties together and feathers together to both shape this work, but then determine what the actionable things are as a result of that.
How will you measure success after focusing on attendance? I mean, is it merely we have a higher attendance rate, or will you also be measuring through survey results that our staff feel as though we are now addressing and appropriately consequences and holding students accountable? Because all I've heard since the pandemic is that this is a nationwide problem, and sometimes attendance is out of our control. You know, parents just calling in students, calling them out for reasons that may not be necessarily appropriate. Is that out of our control? And if we don't see an improvement in attendance with our students, are we going to be seeing this as a failure? And I'd just like to hear from you as to, besides not just setting what our mission is for next year, what are our goals? And if we can set some goals, I'd like to be able to come back a year from now and assess whether or not we reach those goals.
Yeah, the first overarching one is the one that's our indicator and measure that shows up both on our strategic plan indicators and in the school report card, which is chronic absenteeism. Right, that is that overarching key measure that we will be looking at between this year and next year. The team that is our attendance team over this next month will be after the meeting with EAB, looking at the feedback from our staff. We'll be identifying some sub-measures underneath that that we know are lead indicators of chronic absenteeism. We're not prepared to present on those yet at this point. That's going to be the work, over the next kind of 6 weeks, and then again over the summer. But you could expect that when you're sitting here in the fall and through the next school year, you're going to hear a lot about attendance and metrics and measurables and what we're looking at inside of there. A lot of that based on this presentation that we'll hear from EAB about what are those things that the research indicates you should focus on to move the needle on those. But we also have a wealth of data from what you just saw presented from our own experts on team, what our teachers and our families and our students believe that we should be doing inside of those, and those could also lead to measures. In the fall, we'll also need to have a conversation with all of you as to what should next year's survey look like. Should it be as comprehensive as this? Should it be smaller and focus on key measures? Are there certain questions that you believe we should we do the same thing every year so we can look longitudinally across every question? Or is there certain sets of questions that should be asked every year, every 2 years, every 3 years? Are there questions that shouldn't be asked at all, that could go by the wayside? These are all things that we need to determine as we determine the next year's set of questions that we're going to ask. We're still going to have CSCI because that's a state mandated requirement in the culture survey. The morale survey, it'll be up to the board to decide upon the recommendation of that team that leads it of do we do that morale survey more often, less often? Are we going to just ask the questions around ownership and input next year as we continue to work on that? These are all things that need to be determined, and that's the work inside of and underneath this statement of work.
Inside this statement, I see attendance, obviously.
Yep.
But I also see holding students accountable, and I also can see staff
No, you
morale.
see increased accountability and consistencies and consequences. That isn't just students. That's all of us.
Okay.
That's students, that's staff, that's administration. There's a lot of pieces in there. We know that, like, staff absenteeism is a lead indicator of student absenteeism. We know that we need to prop up some structures, and Infinite Campus is going to help us in that, in taking student attendance, tracking student attendance, student passes outside of the class period. There are things there at all levels that we need consistency and consequences and accountability around, whether that be student behavior or staff behaviors that are connected to improving areas of attendance. So accountability, consistency and consequences, also interventions and supports. Staff that aren't doing what's expected, we need to help prop them up. You heard it through staff development, like better understanding what those options are, how to use them appropriately, what are the best things to do, what is the best way to create an engaging learning environment. You saw that in the student feedback that was up there. So there's a lot inside of this that will get built out over the next 6 weeks and over the next year.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is that, and I also see a morale component of this as well. And so I guess back to my question, what I was kind of trying to get at is, if we come back a year from now and we don't see a marked improvement in our attendance, I don't think that means it's necessarily a failure, because there may be opportunities from these other things that we survey our staff, we survey our families and our students, and we see that marked focus on accountability is bringing up our morale of our staff. There could be supplemental or subordinate, improvements along with that. So I guess I would just say, as your team is developing this, and assuming we ultimately approve this on May 19th, that this summer as you build it out, I'd like to see your team build out what kind of goals you want to set for next year, and how we're going to measure those, and how we're going to define whether or not we were successful in implementing these as our primary statement of work.
you will see some of that, but the change in this is the number one measurable is chronic absenteeism.
Chronic absenteeism.
Right? That is
Okay.
the number one measurable that we expect to see move. You will see other data points underneath that, and what all of the research on high-performing schools will tell us is if we move that one and the underlying attendance ones underneath it, the 11 other measures that the board has identified as metrics will all move in a positive direction.
In Ryan's presentation on slide 89, when it talks about the list of things that were listed out, top student accountability, consistent consequences, and then the fourth, attendance and commons management oversight, all kind of encompass the same sort of lack of accountability to a certain extent. And on the next slide, when it talks about addressing attendance issues and unstructured time, when are the students, what is that unstructured, time? When are they lingering, and where are they usually
in the
lingering?
conversations that I've had in drop-in sessions this year and in talking with staff and in the other feedback that we see, there's great concern about a student being in the building but not being in their assigned location, right? That they're, especially with the new spaces, with access resource, those kinds of time, a lunch period, we have great spaces that kids are drawn to, right? So how do we make sure that kids are where they're at? That's part of what you'll see in that plan with Infinite Campus and our attendance software and procedures next year, immediately changing and being able to be ramped up because the tools will allow us to do that. Our current gradebook doesn't allow us great ways to look at attendance, to gather attendance, for families to see attendance. All of those pieces are lacking in our current system. And our next iteration with a new tool next year, as students come in the front door, they're going to scan in so we know that they've arrived in the building. Then from there, each space that they go into, that's why we're buying back Chromebooks from kids. And then Phil and his team have put together scanners that'll be in every location throughout the building. So as a student goes into that space, they'll scan into that space. Then the bell will ring, and we'll be able to do an audit period by period, what kids are where they're supposed to be and what kids aren't. And then we know they're in the building, and we know they haven't arrived in their right spot. It's super easy for our security team and our administrative team at that point to make this is who we're looking for. Go into the commons, go through the hallways, let's go look for this group of students that we know are in the building, but we know they aren't where they're supposed to be right now. Or we might know where they are, right? They scanned into the library, but they're supposed to be in class right now. Well, let's go to the library and get them back to class, right? So we will have better tools next year to help us in this goal as well.
It's interesting because when it talks about changes to the hybrid block schedule, that was only 5% of responses, and some of this unstructured time probably occurs during that access period and other things. When it was brought up initially, there was this idea that it was going to promote student executive functioning in this time so that they were going to be able to take responsibility, and we trusted them enough to not have in this unstructured time to be productive and do the things. Is there any fear that it's not working, that there is some lack of executive functioning that hasn't been developed? I mean, granted, we're talking about attention spans that are rough, with social media and other things. Is there any concern that there is too much unstructured time in their schedules?
I think among some, absolutely. I also think that there is different desires of what to do in that unstructured time. Like if you talk to a student about how they're using that unstructured time, I bet you I'm sure, I've talked to them, many students believe that that is exactly what they need it to be. But it's really frustrating to a teacher that's been working hard with the student on late work or missing work or, things that they should be getting accomplished, and they walk through the commons and see that student socializing or not engaged in their classroom work, right? That would be frustrating to me as a teacher as well. But then it's also coming to terms with students are making choices of how to use their time. That resource time used to be the late start time on Monday mornings. Students weren't at school during that time. Staff members never saw what students were doing during late start on Monday morning. So it wasn't a point of frustration. It wasn't a perception that students should be using that time productively. It was just the late start time, right? So the fact is they're in the building. They have the opportunity to make choices of how to use their time. They also have opportunities to take opportunity of the wealth of resources we have for them at that time, where previously during the late starts, they had no access, they weren't allowed on campus, right? They had no access to anything. So there's the ideal desire that students are really absolutely productive in that area, especially students that are struggling, and the reality that they might be struggling because they aren't totally using that time productively. And over time, as we grow and continue to grow in this schedule, we'll continue, we're already this year supporting kids a little bit differently, especially struggling kids in that space. And these are things that you continue to grow and evolve into. But, you know, the goal at the beginning was just don't have them at home in their pajamas with their Lucky Charms during that block of time. Have them on campus and have access to us and their resources during that time. We've accomplished that first step. Now, how do we continue to evolve in there to help students make better choices? You know, but at the same time, we're the adults deciding if that's a good choice or a bad choice. Like you heard tonight about all of our athletes that are super scheduled, or our kids in activities after school. If that's 78 minutes once a week is their like downtime, then that's their choice to make during that time. It's about, are they making an intentional choice during that time? Are we helping them make that choice? If it's a student that has a rough time outside of school and they don't have a lot of safe spaces to be in, and they don't have a lot of access to food and those resources, and for that 78 minutes they have a safe, warm space where they can get food and socialize with their friends, well, we have to respect for that kid that might be that right choice for 78 minutes. Me as a teacher, that might be really frustrating because I'm really working hard to get that student to succeed. I think the greater frustration comes from kids that are supposed to be in a space and are choosing to go into that spot instead of that, is where the greatest level of frustration I hear is from our teachers, is that they're able to, some students at times are able to cut school in school. And if we can eliminate that level of frustration, that's like low-hanging fruit. If we can get that out, I think you'll see a lot of this take a jump. And then it's just, you know, just keep chipping away at those concerns that you see in there. Make sure that consequences are consistent, communication is consistent, that we help teachers understand what strategies they can use in the classroom to help reinforce that. These are all things you see in that feedback that we need to build into our work plan as we go into the next school year.
So is that a big push for the ID scans with the classroom then?
Mm-hmm.
I know we had talked about it at the parent advisory meeting, and I just had some questions around, could that be a potential of cell phones back in the hand? Because we had talked about, well, how would they scan if they don't have their ID, if they're not mandated to wear a lanyard? Where all of a sudden what we were hoping we could maybe get it out, oh, well, we could have them scan their ID from their phone.
Whether it's through the state or through our own internal plans, then there'll be a step once they get into the classroom to give teachers options for how they handle that device once it comes into their space, right? And we're waiting to see what happens, and I've shared that with the staff as well, as to what happens at the state level with legislative changes in cell phone use and management in the classroom level. Once we know what that is, or that it's not going to be a thing, then we can determine what our next steps will be internally to help teachers respond to that. But I imagine whether it's through our own work or the state laws that are being proposed, some kind of what they call secure storage in the legislative action would be an option for every teacher, right? That kids come in, they scan in with either their ID or their phone, and then if the teacher then chooses, we would provide every classroom a location to dock that device or to put that device at home base or however, whatever language you want to use, so that if a teacher then chooses to have that, that we allow that. We were on pace to announce that. As the returning board members know, like back in January, we worked with the DGA to figure out what some options are that our teachers were looking for, but then we kind of called time out while we waited for this to process through at the state level. We didn't want to roll out a plan that then, or a solution that didn't align with whatever the state chooses. And they have to back it up and move forward again. So we kind of called a time out, and then we'll kind of see what comes of that work, and then we'll have options for our teachers going into the next school year. So that's another one, though, that you're clearly in the concerns there with cell phones, right, and options for that. So we do have a plan to respond to that feedback as well. Any other questions? I know it's getting late. All right, it's a lot to take in. Like I said, as questions come up, feel free to reach out to me as board members. You have my cell phone number. Shoot me a text. Tell me you want to talk. We're happy to talk through any of this with you and dig in as deep as you want to go. Or if this is enough for you, that's fine too. But really, it's setting this the statement of work at our next meeting to guide all of the work we'll do as a leadership team, and all the planning we'll do heading into the next school year. All right. Thank you to everybody on my team for helping present. All right, ISB Consolidated District Plan, Gina.
Don't have a survey. Sorry. But I do have the Consolidated District Plan. And this is our 7th year. So 7 years ago, the state of Illinois, in accordance with grant requirements from the federal government, started to require school districts to have a Consolidated District Plan. And what that plan does is it basically asks us a series of questions that we need to respond to around some key areas. It encompasses Title I, which is low income, specifically addressing student achievement and improving our programming. Only South is a Title I school. Title II, which is funds that we receive from the federal government that flow through the Illinois State Board of Education for professional development, for teacher professional development, for staff professional development, mentoring, those kinds of things. Our Title III grants, we have 2 of them. Language, they're for EL learners. They're both around language acquisition. Our first one is one that we receive every year, which is our LIEP grant, which is Language Instruction Education Program Grant. There's another Title III grant, which we receive some years, not every year. It's based on an increase in students who are under 3 years in the country and new to our schools, and that's the Immigrant Education Program Grant. Consolidated District Plan also encompasses Title IV, which is my favorite grant of any of these, and one that we don't get a lot of funding for, but we are able to use for all kinds of academic enrichment. And then IDEA, which is our special education grant, which Scott manages. So the Consolidated District Plan focuses on all of the grants I mentioned. It asks a series of questions that focus on these themes. And while we've been doing this for 7 years, this is our 7th Consolidated District Plan that we will submit. It has changed a little bit over the years, but these main topics have remained pretty much the same. And the first one is student achievement and timely graduation. And a lot of this is not necessarily new. What is newer to the plan, I put in red font. Please note, it doesn't mean that it's newer to District 99. It means that in the focus groups that we've looked at, the groups of parents we've talked to, teachers we've talked to, staff members we've talked to, new things came out, and we decided to include those in the plan. In some cases, they may be brand new. but in some cases, they're not necessarily new, but they're new to the plan, so that's why they're in red font. So, student achievement and timely graduation is a large part of this plan. And that makes some sense, right? Especially since our rating, and you heard Jill talk about our rating being commendable. So schools receive a summative rating each year right around Halloween. 50% of that rating is based on graduation rates for high schools. And so it makes sense that that's a huge component in the plan. And we have to answer a series of questions that get to some of the bulleted points here. For example, you know, our coursework. What kind of courses do we offer? Do we offer different opportunities for students like AP and dual credit? And actually, this is not completely accurate. As of 12:50 p.m. today, we now have 18 dual credit courses because we just had one approved today, but I will update that before the board meeting. But dual credit, transition, English and math. We have had transition math in our district for several years, and what that means is that students take a math class with us, fourth-year math class, and based on success in that class, and our alliance would work with COD as well as portability throughout the state, they matriculate into college-bearing courses if they go on to COD or another community college in the state. TCD, EL supports, these are all parts of that timely graduation and student achievement. Another part of that section talks about how do we assess students? How do we determine if students are meeting the state's academic standards? What multiple measures do we use to identify at-risk students, students who need additional support? And there are a plethora of different tests that we use internally, but some of the big ones now are the ACT suite. So now we give pre-ACT, this was the first year obviously, pre-ACT for 9th and 10th graders, ACT for our juniors. We also use MAP, STAR, and iReady scores that we receive either internally or for our sender districts. So we can look at data as students matriculate to North or South. Our EL students all take the access test. Matter of fact, in order to graduate or to exit out of EL services, you have to have a requisite score on the access test. And then in our reading classes, we also use various tests. We also look at grades, teacher input, and all kinds of factors as to how we're going to assess whether or not students are at risk and are in need of some sort of support. The plan also asks us to look at different interventions that are either programmatic or individualized to certain groups of students. And I did add just a few this time. For the first year, and Ryan left, I believe, but a shout out to Ryan, who oversees our summer school program. For the first year, we will be actually offering EL English courses for our students, and that is huge. And it's used for a couple of reasons. One, we see more and more students coming to us later in the school year. So for example, a student comes in March. A student who already is an English language learner, already has a lot to learn in terms of language proficiency, English proficiency, and to make up an entire year of English when they just come to us in March is next to impossible. And so we see oftentimes, because as we look at this data, we de-aggregate it by different groups of students. For example, EL students, economically disadvantaged students. We look at it by race, gender, ethnicity, all kinds of different ways that we look at the data. A lot of times when our EL students are not graduating on time, it's because they cannot get their 4 credits of English in. And so for the first time this summer, and we have seen enrollment, significant enrollment, because we were a little unsure of how many students we would actually see enrolling in the courses, we'll be offering EL summer school classes. We also have looked at some other alternative learning programs, and those are very individualized for students. One other thing that I added to the list, and a lot of these have been on here for years, as I said, was teacher office hours. We never included that in the plan, even though we've had teacher office hours for years. So that's an example of something that's new in the plan on how we're meeting student needs, but not necessarily new to the district. Another section of the plan is about professional development, and you heard a lot about professional development tonight in terms of personalized professional learning. We also, several years ago, started rolling out EL, professional learning for all teachers, and that's been a huge focus for us. But in more recent years, we've seen more with restorative practices. So we had, for example, groups of staff members going out to different conferences this year, working on how to build restorative practices into our instruction and into the way we work with student behavior. In terms of IDEA, this is an area of the consolidated plan that Scott works primarily on, but we need to talk about how we support students who have an IEP or students with a disability, and we do that in a variety of different ways. Youth and care is an area of the plan that has kind of morphed over time. It used to be called our foster care transportation plan, and then it became a youth and care stability plan. It still involves transportation, but it really is about making sure that school districts are meeting the needs of students who are considered youth and care or foster students. And we do that in a variety of different ways, including transportation, but oftentimes it is very dependent on that individualized student and what that individualized student's needs might be. Another section is about safe learning environment, and you also heard a little bit, I believe it was Ryan who mentioned our bystander training. We do a lot with anti-bullying and harassment programs to ensure not just that our students feel safe, but that the environment is conducive to learning. We also have our PBIS programs, Positively North and Mustang Way. College and career readiness is another key area. And certainly you heard a little bit about our 4-year plan. That is part of it. While not necessarily listed on the sheet, another thing to point out that you heard about earlier in the fall, and we had various presentations on our movement from Naviance to School Links, where students are able to see a lot more and do a lot more in the program to better prepare them for college and careers. And then post-secondary 4-year planning is a specific part of the plan. This is an area I think that we have done incredibly well and continue to improve on as we move towards ensuring that we're not just preparing students for college, but for whatever comes next for them. Whether that could be community college, whether that could be military, whether that could be the world of work, and we're doing that in a variety of different ways. A couple things that also in this area that come out is we've seen increases in our number of students earning like the seal of biliteracy, which can allow students who demonstrate proficiency both in English and a foreign language the opportunity to earn credit if they go to an Illinois college or university. Another part of the plan, is Title I programming, and a lot of the programs that we support with Title I, and remember I said only South is a Title I school, a lot of those programs we have supported for years. For example, we have a reading program, which is a very intensive structured reading program called Read 180 for our lowest level readers. That is a program we've had in place for probably 15 years or so. So a lot of the programs are long-standing, but one thing I'm really excited about for next year, and this is all dependent on federal funding and the amount of federal funding we receive, which we have not gotten notice of yet. Trust me, I check every day and checked a couple hours before this meeting. But we are hoping to hire another math specialist, but this time have that math specialist specifically working with science classes as well. Those classes that are more in science, obviously, but more math intensive. We currently have 2 math specialists, one that for the most part is full-time with us. In the fall was part-time math specialist, part-time Avid tutor, and part-time working outside of District 99. This semester is working in Avid as a tutor and also as a math specialist. But we are hoping to bring on, assuming that funding is similar to where it is today, where it was this year, hoping to bring on a third. The other one that we have working is very part-time in that area. And then the bilingual service plan, because remember I said this relates also to our 2 EL grants, our LIEP, Language Instruction Education Program Grant, and our Title III Immigrant Education Grant, is the bilingual service plan. And that is where we are ensuring that we are meeting all the state requirements in terms of meeting the needs of our EL, our English language learners, as well as our bilingual students. We have a bilingual program in District 99 for our Spanish-speaking students. So students, whenever a school has more than 20 or more students of the same language, we are required by Illinois law to have a bilingual program where those students can take EL classes, sure, but they also have the opportunity to take bilingual classes where part of the instruction is in the language, so part in this case in Spanish. So that bilingual service plan includes professional development. We have to ensure that we are providing PD not only to EL teachers, but to all teachers, which we do through a variety of different ways, and that we're incorporating different aspects of the program, like our bilingual parent advisory, which is required to meet 4 times a year. We far exceed that. And our BPAC has done quite well this year in terms of meeting the needs of our families. So those are the very, believe it or not, very high-level key points, summarizing points of the Consolidated District Plan, which we will bring back to the board at the meeting later this month for approval and then submit to the state. Approved.
Will we know the funding by the time we vote, or?
That is a great question. So in meetings I had a few weeks ago with basically the state, they were at that point 2 to 4 weeks behind getting any notification from the federal government. And that was a couple of weeks ago. So now we're probably looking at, what, 4 to 6 weeks at least behind from when the state receives the allocation is when they determine how it's going to be dispersed to the districts. That is about a 2-week span. So once they get notice from the feds, give or take 2 weeks before we get notice in the individual districts. So it's hard, it is challenging in some ways to write this plan this year, not knowing it, because typically at this point, we would have a pretty good sense. The first notice we get, by the way, is always an estimate, and it's typically lower than what we actually end up with, not by, it's not a huge difference, but we do not even have an estimate at this point.
So we vote, and if you don't get enough, then you come back and we decide
Well-
what we prioritize, or
Depends.
or do we find other, yeah.
We
can
have
talk
to
with-
turn
yeah.
in, we have to turn in the consolidated district plan before
Yeah.
we can even spend any grant money, even if it's awarded, even when I submit the grants, and even if they're approved. So we have to move forward with the consolidated district plan. As Jerry knows and Hank knows, I've got about 4 different ideas, like a plan A is we get the grants like we do right now and we do this. And plan B as well, if we have to sacrifice something, we might sacrifice this or that, or find a different funding source for it. We have a little bit of flexibility in terms of like Title IV and how we use some of that, so we might be able to co-fund. We call it braiding or blending when you take different grants to fund things. So we've been talking about different ways, but some of these things, in my opinion, we will have to locally fund. We have students, for example, registered next year for Read 180. That is a program that is funded not just through Title I, but is also locally funded. We fund parts of it through local dollars. If we do not receive Title I funding or do not receive a significant amount, unfortunately, I will be knocking on Jerry's door begging to figure out how we're going to fund the remainder of that amount. So I know that's not a great answer, but at this point, that's where we stand. I'm hopeful. I'm anticipating that we will get the same or a very similar amount as we have in past years. But at this time, I do not know.
What does Title I funding represent as a total percentage of our revenues, roughly?
I don't.
All federal funds, 2%.
All federal?
All federal.
And is Title I 50% of that?
No.
400,000.
400,000. Okay.
Probably the largest of those grants, I believe, would be Scott's IDEA.
And IDEA is a subset of Title I, or no? It's
Separate for
separate?
special education.
And how much is that a percentage of our total budget, Jury?
IDEA?
Oh, IDA would probably be about 1%.
1%.
So half of all federal funds.
So like $10 million is what you're telling me? Maybe more.
We get about 2% of all of our funding is from federal, 6% is roughly state, and the rest is the new property taxes and then some little local money. So,
But of the 2%, 1% is roughly IDEA.
yeah, about half.
A little over a
For
million.
federal funding is IDA. It's a little over $1 million. You won't-
Oh, yeah, you're right, you're right. Well, I don't know why I said 10 million, sorry.
Sorry, it's late.
Yeah, it is.
Some of these
You've sat through
grants
2 board
are-
meetings so far.
Some of these grants are really small amounts, like Title IV, my favorite grant. I mean, I think this year we had maybe 36,000, 38,000. Title III IEP grant, well, immigrant ed, I shouldn't say IEP because that gets confusing. I think we're at about 10,700, maybe 30,000 for LIEP. So they're not huge grants in light of the entire budget, but they are targeted for certain populations.
In the meetings that I was in Springfield last week, these funds have already been allocated federally, they just haven't been dispersed. The belief, and this is just reading tea leaves, right, is because the funds have already been allocated and planned for distribution that they're coming this year, there's greater concerns about next year. So, we'll see. We'll see on both fronts, but that's where the greater concern is a year from now, and not so much now.
Okay.
I just want to really quickly say that I think it's super great that you're hiring another math specialist. I think sometimes it can be a little bit undervalued how much they help, but it's super beneficial. The one at South is super awesome, and sometimes they can actually teach the math better than the actual teacher, so it's just great.
Thank you for sharing that.
Shout out for the
Something
math specialist.
that is something near and dear to my heart, so I really appreciate you saying that.
Can I just ask something real quick as a newbie? I've heard the acronym AVID twice tonight. What is AVID?
AVID is a college readiness program for students who fall kind of in that middle band of test scores that are willing to put in the work, that are determined to really take the highest level courses. So when you're in the AVID program, and we have it for all 4 years, so we have freshman class, sophomore, junior, and senior at both campuses. The expectation is that those students are going to take accelerated classes. These are students who, maybe without AVID, might not take those accelerated classes, but there's support built into the program for that. And so, for example, I mentioned like our math specialist is also an AVID tutor. Tutorials are done 2 days a week. They are student-led tutorials, and they really are, in my opinion, the heart of the program. So it's really about students taking ownership for their learning, accelerating their learning, and being prepared to go on to a 4-year college experience.
That's great.
Any other questions, comments?
This will come back next month as a report in advance of the board taking action on it. So if there's anything else as you dig into the report, you have other things that you'd like Gina to comment on at the next point, feel free to reach out to me, and Gina and I will make sure that that shows up before you are asked to take action in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gina.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. All right, the next one is great news and relatively quick. So energy conservation update. Travis is at a conference and is unable to be here to present this to you, so I get the joy of doing it, and this is some great news. Energy conservation has been a long-term goal of this board for as long as I have been here. Travis has really dug into this, and you can see the list of projects that he's looking at here for the next school year. Total costs of these projects, about $1.4 million in costs. Some really cool stuff on there, including getting electric vehicles in driver's ed. Though anybody who's driven an electric vehicle knows that it's a little different than a regular combustion engine to drive, so we want our students to have both experiences. We have in our budget right now, between our Fund 90, that was, remember, our leftover life safety funds, previous board members will remember that. Some ComEd rebates for the solar improvements and lighting improvements, And then we had budgeted $60,000 for some new driver's ed vehicles. That's, $742,000 that we already had set aside or that we have coming through other locations. And then Travis worked really hard with some of our state legislators, and State Representative Anstava Murray has secured $500,000 for the solar projects. And Senator Rachel Ventura has submitted for an additional $300,000 for the LED stadium lighting and electric vehicle charger installation. Both of these are part of the state budget, or expected to be allocated, but you have to work through Springfield, right? But so when you take in those additional fundings that Travis has secured by writing these grants and proposals, you're zeroed out in the cost of this for next year. So incredible, excellent work from Travis to get these projects secured and funded. So putting it all together, this is all that you're getting. And then these projects also secure additional incentives and rebates, both at the state and from the power company. Those add up to at least our lowest conservative number over that next 5 years, a total of about a little over $600,000. Jury also says that there is potential for, depending on what happens with the federal government, additional federal incentives and rebates that could go along with that could be substantial. So Travis not only is paying for these projects, but has created projects that also pay us back. That doesn't even include savings in just electrical costs. So this is the first presentation tonight. This also comes back in a couple of weeks for approval from the board. Any questions?
Is that one charging station per campus?
That'll be, is that what it is? One? Yeah.
And primarily to be used by the
To
instructional
only be used by
vehicles
the instructional
only?
vehicles.
Only?
Yes.
Programmed to go with
What we're looking at.
manufacturer that we're looking at. Those chargers can only limited, restricted to only that vehicle, no other car can be.
All right. Teachers can't.
No.
They can't.
Community or anybody else, yeah.
Or board members who come to an ASC meeting.
Nope, off the list.
Okay.
All right, at this point, I'm gonna invite our students. The next part is just for the board, because it's the introduction into the board software. There's no reason for you guys to continue sticking around. Thanks for hanging in for a long evening, but I'm sure you guys have some work to do probably still tonight. So thank you, Jason Rohan, for your time this evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
You too.
All right, the last item is the new board packet software. We're moving from Board Docs to Diligent. Julie has put in a ton of work on this in the past year, sitting through many webinars and getting caught up to speed. Actually, tonight's board meetings, too, that, as you've seen, are not actually short. She built in both products over the last week, so she pretty much prepared for 4 board meetings this week. So she's been very busy. But she wanted to show you some of the features. Then we'll go into closed, we'll come out, adjourn, and then we'll stick around just to make sure you can all get logged in. Okay, so Julie?
Okay, this is what the landing page is gonna look like for the public. So when you click on the link that is in the district website, there's a link in the district website on one of the board meeting page for board meeting agendas.
Hit the wrong button.
That's what you'll see. And then the top right corner, it's very tiny, but you can see the word sign in. So if you go in directly from the district website, you can sign in with your ID, which you're gonna set up tonight, and get into the board docs I keep saying board docs, Diligent Community for the board members. And on your Chromebook, when you open it up, there's gonna be actually, in the bookmarks, there'll be a bookmark for Diligent, so when you come to board meetings, you can get into it very quickly. Okay, next. Okay, when you first open the new software, it's gonna look like this. you're gonna click on where it says boards and governance, and then it says community, that's where you're gonna click. And when you click there, this is what you're gonna see, all the meetings that are upcoming. There's also a previous meetings tab, so you can also look at previous meetings. If you look on there, the May 19th meeting shows up. That is not accessible to the public yet, but at some point, I make them accessible to the members of the group. And so you can see the May 19th board meeting kind of being built and see what things are in it or not. You don't have to, but just if you open it up and go, what is this? It's not out there in the public's eye, but you can kind of see it coming up and being built. That's, next one, please. Okay, so when you clicked on a meeting, so this is if we clicked on tonight's meeting, where you see on the right-hand side where it says briefing notes, those are all notes that only board members can see. And you notice there's a little tiny padlock. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little tiny padlock. Anything that has a little tiny padlock, that means that only, thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Couldn't get the pointer.
That only board members can see it. If there's a padlock on it, only board members can see it. So if you look at the agenda outline on the left, that's pretty much what the public is seeing. But on the right, you can see where there's different notes that we may have shared, Dr. Thiele may have shared regarding the different agenda items on the meeting. Any of the blue, where it means there's a link, you can click on either link. So if you would go to like the, we'll do that 1 second. Dr. Thiele and I are the only people, in addition to the board, that can actually see those notes, FYI, because we put them in there. Just that. And then for like next month, or excuse me, for the May 19th meeting, you'll have to approve the minutes from the 2 meetings this evening. So the minutes, the draft minutes will be in that little box with the links. You can look at those minutes and review them prior to voting on approval of them. But if you click on, next slide, I'm sorry, go to the next slide, please. If you, like, there's your oath of office. If you had clicked on oath of office, it would open up right there, but you'd still be able to see the flow of the agenda, so it wouldn't take over the whole screen. You'd still be able to see what's going on. Okay, if you go to the next one, please. Okay, up in the upper right, Jeff, if you want to point up in the upper right, those A's, see those A's? Thank you. The A with the white background is highlighting, so I kind of highlighted Pledge of Allegiance just for fun. So you personally can kind of personalize your agenda copy. There has the A with the underline is, you can underline, it shows oath of office is underlined, and then you can freehand, as you can tell I do really, really bad freehand. I drew a circle around election of officers. But you can kind of make your own notes if there's something you want to ask a question about or whatever gives you the ability to do that. Now if you take a look, and we'll go to those next, but on the left-hand side, of the screen.
Scott, point to those, right next to it.
Right there, those icons. Now we're going to go talk about what those are. If you see the house, it takes you back to that very first screen, the list of board meetings. So if ever you get lost or whatever. The next one is goals. District 99 is not using that icon because information on district strategic plan and goals can be found on the district's website. That cute little one that looks like a picture, that takes you to the district's landing page, the one we saw with the pictures and the kids and all that happy stuff. The library, the District 99 is not using this feature because we put all our documents right into the agendas to make it easier to find. And then the scales, this icon takes you to board policies. We're adding soon, and policies will be keyword searchable, which is pretty darn nifty because right now you just kind of have to read every single policy to find what you wanted. So that's the quick, down and dirty, welcome to Diligent Community.
All right, so we'll get you signed in tonight. If you have questions, you could reach out to Julie or me directly. Reach out to Julie.
Yeah, but
because I'll just have to ask her if you ask me. She's the expert, and I think you're going to like some of those tools and the formatting that's in there, especially returning board members. It's much easier to use.
It's very crisp and clean.
Yeah.
And on the landing page, some of the things like, if you notice in like the current agenda where we have that information at the top, like the board protocols can be found here if you want to access this live via YouTube and all those things. All those things are just on the front public-facing page, so it's not appearing on the top of every single agenda and has all that, I don't want to say clutter, but now we can just have that universally stated on the landing page for the software about board meetings.
All right.
Are we moving to this like effective immediately?
Yes.
Yes, May 19th, we will be on this. It is brought to you by the people who brought to you board docs, and we're basically kind of required to transition. They're phasing out board docs, so it seemed like when the new board was being seated, it seemed like a good time to just move everyone in that direction at the same time.
So you're getting your own copy to make notes on and to document, but is it alive? So as edits might be made, those,
You're not editing, not
No, but
editing the
if-
actual agenda, but your
if-
scribbles,
but if there were edits to be made on your end,
Oh,
right,
like
like,
we, in a sense, we can't edit it because the board agenda has to go public within a certain number
okay,
of hours
so
prior to the
it'll
board
stay
meeting.
as it is.
So anything the board is taking action on, we cannot edit once it's officially published because the community or constituents need to know what we're going to be taking action on, what the board's going to be discussing. Another discussion item could be brought up, but the board could take no action on something if it wasn't published in advance.
Okay.
So no surprises.
And I'll message you and tell you when the document has been finalized, so you can,
Yeah.
after that point, you can do whatever you want to. All right, thank you, Julie, for all your work on this, and look forward to using it here.
All right, item 9, Julie, do we have any
No,
visitors?
sir, we do not have any
Okay.
reception of visitors.
And item number 10, can I get a motion from the Board of Education to go into closed session for A, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body, or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act. And B, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
So moved.
Second.
Chris moves, Ken seconds.
Thank you very much. Chris Espinoza.
Aye.
Ken Doss.
Aye.
Abel Finnan.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
Mike Risky.
Aye.
Kara Caston.
Aye.
And Katie Courtney.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. We are in closed session just for the members of the public. The only action the board will be taking when it comes out of closed session is to adjourn. Let's break for just a brief moment, and we'll be back in closed session.
Normally.
Finish up.